Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Talking TV with my mum, the weekly Geek-Dom genre geek TV review Roundup podcast where we talk about various shows, whether they be fantasy, sci-fi, horror or somewhere in between all of those, and we just, have a good old chat, review them, give our thoughts on them, and hopefully you gain some measure of entertainment from this. It's good to be back. We had a week off to recharge our batteries and deal with other bits and pieces because of school holidays and stuff, so hopefully you coped and didn't miss us too much. But rest assured, we are back with a bumper episode today, so get yourself a drink and some snacks, or if you're at work or whatever, because I know some of you, Will, Zoe, put us on in the background when you're at work, so hopefully we'll help you get through a bit of your working day, or if you're doing the housework or whatever. Perfect soundtrack to whatever you're doing, so hopefully you will enjoy these next few hours with us. As usual, the sort of housekeeping bits, if you enjoy this, then please hit that thumbs up button and leave us a like. Also, comments are always appreciated. We love to hear feedback from you guys and your thoughts and your questions and everything in between. And also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. So if you're new here, then welcome. Please subscribe, help grow this Geek-Dom. We're steadily picking up momentum, so help us get some more, or help me get some more. And also check out the description box for the timestamps for everything we're talking about, along with the link to my Twitter, so you can come and follow and chat to me on there. And also donation mediums. If you feel generous enough and you want to drop a few pennies of your country's currency, then feel free to do so, and you'll help support the podcast and my channel in general to get bits and pieces and grow bigger and better. At the same time, you're under no obligation to do so, but if you do, I'd be very grateful. That being said, I'd like to welcome my co-host. So hello there, Mum.
Hello.
How
everybody.
Are you, Geek Mum?
I'm doing good, thank you, Geek-Dom.
Good. So you're ready to get back on the horse?
Yes, it's been a very exciting 2 weeks. Well, obviously, of watching and prepping.
Yes.
I'm used to doing this on a Friday after work or before work, and last Friday I didn't have anything to do, so I was like, oh, what am I doing with myself?
It was a bit weird not doing it. Yeah, it was weird.
But yes, we're back. So.
We're back, yes, and, hopefully this will also give me that sense of normality again, because obviously I've spoken to you about this off recording, and there's some people out there that are aware I had a bit of a low week last week, and it was that sort of, that song, that nobody loves me, everybody hates me, think I'll go and eat worms. It was that kind of sort of scenario.
Slip, slop, slimy ones, fuzzy ones, wuzzy ones, lovely, 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 lovely worms. Sorry.
That's exactly it, yes.
The heads off. So do you want to carry on?
No. Just in case it's copywritten to somebody. But yeah, so it was a bit of a meh, but I'm back up now, back up to my.
It's because you didn't have your routine last week.
Self.
You see, that's what did it. You didn't have your routine.
Yeah, exactly.
You didn't have your pod. Didn't have the old poddy.
Didn't have the old poddy. No, exactly.
Got the poddy back. We were all good.
Yeah, we're all good now. It's all gravy, baby.
Yeah.
So we should get underway because we have quite a bit to cover. So we're going to get started in a moment. Before we do, we're just going to quickly recap some comments from the previous podcast. Outside of the general comments on the video side of things, I've received other comments through Twitter and things like that. The logo was received very well.
Good.
People seem to think it's very cool and it looks really good. I had a couple of things. Some people sort of saying, it would make a really good tattoo and things like that, like the style of it and stuff.
Actually, yeah, that's a really good idea. Actually, yeah.
So yeah, very positive
Maybe
response.
I'll have one.
Yeah, positive response to that, which is awesome. So thank you once again to my friend DJ Amanda. She actually, we'll quickly get on to, she commented, she said thank you obviously for us, shouting her out and promoting her for her work. But, at the end of the day, she did some good stuff for me and for us, for the podcast. She did have a suggestion about the issue that we've got with the converting the podcast into audio-only formats. I'm not going to go through the comments specifically because some of the stuff she said, I then spoke to her and sort of said, I don't know whether that would work or I've already tried this or whatever. But one thing she did say about was downloading the YouTube video as an audio file only via this particular program, and then being able to open the audio file and then upload it. Now, that in practice would work to a degree, but I can already do that because I already have the raw, like the MP3 file on Audacity from when I've edited it. So if it was as simple as that, so the problem that we've still got is I think it needs to come from somewhere. It needs to be on like a blog or a vlog or like a video platform or a website or whatever. It has to be. It can't just come straight off my PC and straight onto a podcast platform. So as much as these ideas were great, Amanda, thank you for that, I don't know whether it's actually going to do what we want it to do. I might be wrong. If anybody's listening to this and they go, no, you dummy, you can do exactly that, then feel free to correct me and tell me.
RSS feed for dummies.
Yeah. But yeah, so let us know. But I'm still looking at how we can make this a possibility. So that's in relation to her comments. There was also somebody called Bernadette said that she loved the episode pictures and that it was good afternoon listening. Just some random woman.
Random person.
No Talent Guy jumped in with, first, it's such an honour to be first in your awesome channel. Your commentary is so nice. And that was really good. And I said, thank you very much. And said that he'd got a little mention. And he said, keep up the amazing work. You are simply incredible. So that was a really nice thing for him to say about us. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
And also Skippy, our buddy Skippy.
Yay, Skippy!
So Skippy said this was in relation to the question he'd asked previously about the shows. And if we could only pick a show to watch for all of eternity, what would it be? So he said, great choices, you two. And I meant outside of the shows you're watching for this, but that's all G. And then he said, he would choose Stranger Things because it's like being a kid again with my brother and sister without the monsters and psychic powers. Ha ha ha. But that's a good pick. Stranger Things is a very solid pick. And then he goes on to ask us not one, but two questions.
Ooh.
One for you and one for me. So we'll go with the one for you first. So he says, another question for the lovely Bernadette. So Geek Mom, who is your favourite character in the Supernatural series?
Skippy. Well, I've still got my boys, haven't I? I've got my Dean and my Sam. I love my Crowley and I love the Devil. But I'm going to go for the Angel Castiel.
There you go. So Castiel is your favourite.
He's a saintly version of Columbo. He's got the same coat. And they're pretty much from the same part of town, I think, as well. So in America. So yeah, Castiel has been my favourite.
There we go then, Skippy. Hopefully you're happy with that. So I suppose you would want to ask him back the same question then, really, wouldn't you?
Well, if you watch Supernatural, who's your favourite character?
There we go. Over to you, Skippy. So the one for me. So this
Put a bit of Australian tinge on that one, didn't
you? This one's for Dom. What did you think of the Star Trek The Next Generation? I personally loved it, and it's the only Star Trek I've enjoyed other than Voyager. Okay, so for me, I did like Deep Space Nine. I think it's got its merits. It sits quite nicely in with all the other shows. There's some nice little links between both Next Generation and Voyager. Also, I quite liked Enterprise, because I like Scott Bakula from back in the Quantum Leap days. And seeing him as the captain of the Enterprise as Captain Archer was really good. So I quite liked that. I think it took some stick, but it also, it did have a fan base and it was quite fun. And I like Discovery. I mean, as much as it gets knocked by quite a lot of the community who are into Star Trek and sci-fi in general, but it also has its supporters, and I'm one of them. I think, and I know you are as well, Mum. I think that it's a fairly solid show. Yes, there are niggles. If you really want to go into it and go, oh, but how does this fit with this? But how would this fit with that? All I will say is, without going into spoiler territory, obviously, if you've listened to some of our earlier podcasts, we discussed it, but they answered a lot of these issues. So a lot of these, where does this fit in with the canon? How does this make sense with this? Why was Michael never mentioned before? Why was this never mentioned? they wrap all that up very
We did say all that
nicely.
in our podcast when it was
Yeah.
on, so we covered all that.
So they
rewind to when we had the Star Trek episode.
exactly, yes. I'll put a link thing up on the screen right now. You'll see a little link to that particular podcast where we did the last Star Trek Discovery
Because
review.
I'm a diehard original Star Trek person,
Mm-hmm.
and obviously I've seen the films, but this was really good.
And
I
I'm
really
looking
thought
I'm looking
I
forward
didn't think they did anything wrong, to fair.
I'm looking forward to seeing where they go now because of the way they ended it. They're now in a position to forge their own path without it
Do
being
anything with this next episode,
Yeah.
can't they, the next series?
So it can be its own thing without being too heavily linked with the past, which is quite a smart move.
Apart from we won't see Spock.
No, we won't, probably, no. But, that being said, your question, though, about Star Trek, yes, I love The Next Generation. What's not to love? Great cast of characters, brilliant captain in Jean-Luc Picard. Patrick Stewart is just awesome. Still one of my favourite Starfleet captains out of all of them. And, you know, like I said, the supporting cast, they're really solid. You know, Riker is a really good second in command who can step up to be the first, the first in command when the time calls for it. I love all of the things with, like, when they had Whoopi Goldberg in. Obviously, Q is a brilliant character. They introduced the concept of the Borg to the Star Trek universe, who are still some of the best Star Trek villains. You know, I could go on, I could talk a whole podcast about Next Generation, but I'm not going to. So, in regards to the question, what do I think? I think it's brilliant. And I'm really excited for Picard. I'm looking forward to revisiting that world with the same characters, but older, with a new story, a new scenario. I think there's going to be a lot of fan service. I think we're going to get lots of nice little nods to previous things, but telling its own story of an older generation moving forward in the Star Trek universe. So I think it's going to be really, really good. So hopefully...
Question back at him.
Yeah, so, well, I mean, yeah, not really, because he said he loved it, so he's already kind of answered it.
Okay.
So I can't ask him that back. But what are your... Okay, I'll ask you then in relation to it then, Skippy. What are your thoughts on Picard? As a big fan of Next Generation, are you really excited for Picard? Are you looking forward to that coming to our screens later this year?
There you go, Skip.
There you go. So that's it. That's the main comments that we have from the last podcast. So as always, you know, leave them down below. We'll give you a shout out. We'll answer them. We'll have a chat about them. So please comment. We would really appreciate that. Any other business?
I think so.
Right. Okay then. In which case we are going to get on and we are going to dive into the first episode we're going to be talking about, which is mixing up the formula a little bit this week. We are going in with S.H.I.E.L.D. and this was episode 11 and it's called From the Ashes. So, would you like to kick us off?
I will start, yes. So at the end of episode 10, we had Azale had jumped into Yo-Yo's body and took Mac into the Gravitonian onto the Quinjet.
Mm-hmm.
Once on the Quinjet, Yo-Yo's been released from Azale and her and Mac are prisoners.
Yep.
So obviously she says Max. She says, "Why are we still alive?" Max saying, "Oh, because they want to find out where the temples are." And Yo-Yo's going, "But there's only one person that knows who knows what that is." And then she blurts out about Benson, Professor Benson.
Yeah.
Then we find out, oh no, she was in Mac all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, I know where the temples might be now. It's like, seriously. Meanwhile, back on I think it was the lighthouse, is it? Yeah.
Yeah.
The team are working on how to save Mac and stop Azale.
Mm-hmm.
And the Simmons clan, I'm going to call them the Simmons clan now.
Yeah.
The Fitzsimmons clan are working on tech to see if they can find something that they can make to stop. So when they get there, they can stop her jumping into people, because obviously that was the big worry.
Mm-hmm.
We also had May trying to get stuff out of Sarge, trying to get, like, she still believes there's Coulson's in Sarge, and trying to apply some info, and he got really annoyed with her, and he smashed his hand on the table and made basically a handprint.
Yes, because that was interesting, because obviously the end of the weeks before, we saw him pacing around, and then he was kind of coming apart and then going back together again. And then, as you said, during this kind of questioning, pushing him sort of session with May, he lost his temper because he's like, I'm not that man. I might be getting these, but I'm not him. He slammed his hand into the table and left a big dent, which left them both like, oh, how did that happen, sort of thing. And it turned out the others were kind of watching on monitors. They were watching from the sort of control room, and they saw that too. And they're like, well, look what he can do. And Daisy was very much, at this point, Daisy was very much like, that thing is not Coulson. She spoke to May, and she's like, you need to let go of this. And it was quite interesting as well, I found, because of May being she's so sort of pragmatic normally. She's so, staunch and soldier-like and not quibbling about stuff, but she was really getting into this whole, like, but he could still be in there and holding all this hope out. And Daisy's the complete opposite, and she's like, that thing is not Coulson. And we need what's inside him. We need to find out how to get that power. So we need to try and, pull that out of him somehow. And they, their ideologies were very different. They were butting heads about this, weren't they?
Well, meanwhile, back at on the Quinjet, because they've blabbed out to that stupid Isaiah about Benson, she's got him to come on the ship.
Yeah.
And he's like, happy to see everybody. And she's Mac's asking all the questions tell him about where your theories, and Yo-Yo's there trying to let Benson know something that wasn't right with it all. And he said, so I think he mentioned something about Keller, and then she goes, yeah, he's fine. And he obviously knew he died because he was there when he died. And that was her like, don't tell him anything. This is her way of doing it.
Yeah, because she did.
It wasn't in her body, so she couldn't pick it up.
She did the shifty eyes thing, didn't she? Because she said that, and she was like, I'll be sure to tell him. And then she sort of darted her eyes over to Mac as if to say, here's the cut. And then he was, oh.
So he decided, he's like going, oh, well, I don't think, he was trying to like back off, didn't want to help her. And she sussed it, didn't she? So she made Mac kill the guy that come on the ship with him. He just like
stabbed him in the neck.
Stabbed him and just revealed herself to Benson. I said, well, I'm capable of, you need to help me. And he goes, there's nothing you can do to me that's nothing worth, nothing you can threaten me with. And the Simmons clan are creating a sword like the one, the little ones they had. He decided, they said, well, we can make this big sword.
Yeah.
Based on the same sort of thingy, basically. So it's like getting closer. Meanwhile, back at the Quinjet, Yo-Yo and Mac are now in a containment pod. So she's like, well, I don't need them to. I've got this guy. And she's using the gravitonian to make Benson see his ex-husband, the one that died in an accident.
Oh, that was horrible because...
Oh, that's horrible.
Because obviously them two are stood there going, don't buy into this. It's not real. Don't let it affect you. And this guy is forming in front of him. And then we got a very tragic story because this guy, like you said, turned out that was his partner who had died, and he was talking to him about when he died, and he's sort of, oh, you were there by my bedside, and I remember you talking to me, and he's like, how could you know this? You were in a coma or something. And he's like, I knew you were there, and I could feel you. And then he said about the alcohol on his breath.
Yeah.
And that's when Benson broke, didn't he? And he started crying, and he was like, I'm so sorry. And it's like, oh my God. Then it was clever how they did it, because they never explicitly went, oh, on this night, this thing happened. They told the story in a very interesting way that it then dawns on you, the viewer, that, oh my God, he was driving and he had been drinking. And the reason they had the accident was because he was drink driving, and he survived and his partner didn't. And he's had to live with that guilt. So then you're like, that's why it was his fear. That's why it was this thing that she could use against him.
Yeah, because he never wanted him to know.
Yeah.
That it was the thing he feared. And she goes, not as easy to want to die now, is it? Because like, you don't want, when you see him now, he knows what you did.
Yeah.
So he said, so basically he sort of went, stop. And then he disappeared again. And so she said, right, you can help me then.
Mm-hmm.
Back at the lighthouse, Daisy decided to take a different approach to Sarge.
Yep.
And she got really angry with him. She quaked him.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't he have an episode before he came back, like he remembered who he was.
Well, she quaked him, and he went flying across the room and broke his neck. So then he was laid on the floor, and they were like, what the hell is she doing, watching on the monitors? And they're like, oh, this, that, and the other. And then they scanned his body, and you could see this energy. And there was all this weird energy sort of building, growing throughout the body. And then they're like, wait, he's like regenerating again. And when he kind of came to, it was the whatever's inside him that sort of come to the surface again a bit, hadn't it?
Yeah, because obviously just before she went in and had a go at him, that letter we saw a couple of weeks ago was from Coulson. She'd read the Coulson letter and thought, right, I'll find out if he's Coulson or he's Sarge. So that was her plan. She'd obviously read the letter. So then she's poked him again, and he turned around and his hands went all weird, didn't they? Like, he turned into whatever he was. He attacked her.
Yeah, he sent her flying
he
across
just,
the room, didn't he?
Yeah, he just smashed the door.
Yep.
It's like, it got out. It broke out. And then, so she thought, right, I'm going to grab the sword. I'm going to confront him. And she followed him. She was getting really angry. And there he was. And he called her Sky, didn't he?
Yeah, because he had the sword as well. No, she had the sword, and she went after him. And obviously there was all this devastation anywhere. When she finally confronted him in the corridor, he was baiting her. And he was like going, come on, your only option is to destroy me. You know what I am. Once I get when I'm fully loose, I'm going to be able to destroy everything, and you're not going to stand a chance. So your only option here is to get rid of me once and for all. Use the sword. Do it, Sky. And then she went, what? And that, like, jumped her back into reality, and she was like, wait. And then she dropped the sword.
There's a little bit of Coulson still in there, yeah.
And she dropped the sword, and she went, wait, you want me to kill you? You're willing to sacrifice yourself. That's exactly the thing that Phil Coulson would do. He would make the sacrifice for the greater good. And that's when she was like, there is still some of Coulson inside you. And then she like hugs him and is like, starts crying and stuff like that. And she now finally then believes what May believes of
May was feeling, exactly.
That he is still kind of, there's Coulson elements in there still somewhere.
Yeah.
And then it's like, right, we need to use him now. He can help us and have him as an ally rather than, worrying about him and stuff like that.
So, meanwhile, back on the Quinjet, Yo-Yo has had an idea about, she's realised the Gravitonia is what this woman needs. And obviously she's got what she needs. She brings Benson back and says, got what I need now, chucks him in the pod. So that was her opportunity. When she opens the door, she does a quick whisk in and grabs the Gravitonia, doesn't she?
Yeah.
But unfortunately, Isaiah got back in her, didn't she? But that meant that Mac jumped out of the containment. That's what he's trying to get to, so that he could press a button to. Then the professor was free. The containment thing just disappeared, didn't it? It's like, right. She goes, yeah, but she knows where the temple is. And she said it doesn't matter because he can now tell them where the temple is.
Mm-hmm.
So they know where we're going, basically.
Yeah.
So it was like, clever call. Yeah.
Yeah, that was good.
Back at the lighthouse, Deeks worked out how Isaiah does her leap thing.
Mm-hmm.
And they can make something to stop her. But obviously, they've got to work on that.
Well, what's funny about this bit is that out of the three of them, you would say he's the dummy out of Fitzsimmons and Deke, but he's the one that cracked it. And he went, wait, and he's on about sonics and vibrations, and it seems like her power works to do with sound and to do with sonic frequencies. So if we could create something that would like disrupt that or interrupt that, then we would be able to stop her from being able to do the possessions. So they're like, oh, that's really clever. Yes, that's fantastic. Brilliant.
You're a wizard.
Good job. Yeah, you're a wizard. So
You're a wizard. So he got mapping out what they had to do.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really cool. Obviously, they found out that Benson had been rescued, and they had the location.
Yeah.
We've just found out that he's appeared somewhere in South America or North America or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
They said he's safe. We now have the location.
Yep.
We're back at the temple. She's now tied up Mac and Yo-Yo because she took them into the temple after Benson went.
Yeah, that's right.
Tied them up to a pillar, and she's optimistic, but she has a slight problem because it's something else not going to work. Create the monoliths. So she turns around to him and goes, "Well, I can use your minds."
Mm-hmm.
And then the next thing we know, the young guy from when they were in the future, wasn't it?
Flint, yeah.
Flint appears. It's like, oh, so because obviously I remembered what he could do.
Yeah.
And then we'll return later.
Mm-hmm.
And then we went to the Chronicons.
That's right.
And they've all rebelled. They all rebelled. They killed the woman that was in charge.
Yeah.
and now they're all classed as hunters. So basically, they're hunting them now, hunting Enoch, hunting everybody. It's like, whoa.
Yeah, and what was interesting about that bit was that she'd said she found a way for them to potentially save their planet, and he said, no, we should move ahead with the plans for Chronica 3. She was like, no, 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 we don't need to do that. And then he, like you say, he killed her and then said about sending them off to get specific targets. And you're like, okay. But they didn't really give us much in the way of information. It was very much a little pieces of stuff that you're then like,
Yeah.
what does this all mean, though?
What does this mean? Yeah.
And that's where
Yeah.
we left that one. So then we
then-
move on to the two-part finale. So the two-part finale,
Yes.
this first bit is called The Sign.
So obviously we started where we left off, where the young guy had appeared,
Yep.
Flint, and she'd called him because he could make things with dirt. So she's going to get him to build the monoliths.
Well, the first thing about she was confused because she was like, I go into your minds and I try to find something that you're afraid of to help me and all this stuff. And she's like, why would you summon this boy? And then he gets up on his feet and he goes, you don't know what I can do, lady. And he starts forming like it was almost like a dagger out of
Yeah, because
earth,
he was getting
wasn't it?
angry, wasn't he? And he was making
Yeah.
something out of,
And he
that's
shot
right.
it towards her. She grabbed it, and then she's like, "Ah, now I understand." And she's like, "Now I
I'm
can
not going to
see."
help you. He says, I'm not going to help you. She goes, don't worry. I just need you.
Yeah, and she possessed him, and then you're like, "Oh crap!" So now she can use his power to Now she knows what he can do. She can use his power to recreate the monoliths, because that was the thing. Obviously, that although she had the power of the monoliths in that orb, she needed the actual physical things to be built again in order to be able to use their power. So that's what she then used him, because we saw this in the future. That's how they got back in the first place, was that he was able to use his power to reunite all the pieces of the monolith in the future to be able to send them all back to the present day.
Exactly, yeah. He saved them all. He was a saviour, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Right, so we had him, so she's going to get him to build them. So meanwhile, back at the lighthouse, Sarge is going, they've decided Sarge is going with them to get Isael.
Yeah.
Because now they've sorted out their differences. And they go to see the Fitzsimmons clan, and they go, right, we have cuffs for so many, but we can't make them for everybody. And then Deke went, well, actually, and he just opened a case. It's like, cuffs for everybody. And he goes, you truly are a wizard. Like,
yeah.
Little did he know at the time.
Yeah.
So, and May still hopes they can separate the two bits of Sarge.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's any way we can save that part of him, bless her. She's like, I really want to do this.
The other thing here was the fact that obviously Iselle was trying to open a portal to her world. And so I think May's logic is, if we can somehow almost like suck this being out of the body and send it back through that portal, what will be left behind will effectively be Coulson free of this alien being. And so that's kind of her mindset going into this, is like, if we can separate them somehow and send that away and just leave this body behind, then we'll have Coulson back. And it's like, not really sure whether it'll work that way, or, but we'll have a look and we'll see, but don't get your hopes up. Don't sort of pin everything on this sort of thing.
Yeah. And that Isael started summoning the strike, didn't she, to bring an army?
Yeah, this was after... So with her, so basically she, before she summoned the army, she recreated the monoliths. So she managed to make them all, so they're all there. And then she's like, I don't need you anymore. So she kind of dumped like his body. She like came out of his body.
Yeah, dumped Flint on the floor.
And he was exhausted, and he's like, oh, I don't know what's going on and stuff like that. And then she jumped into Yo-Yo, and Yo-Yo broke his leg.
Yeah.
And then she jumped out again. So it's like, yep, don't cross me. Look at what I can do. And then she was like, you stay here. I still have need for you. And she left the temple. And then he had that really weird, and it was so funny when we watched it, because Zoe was like, what was the point of that? Why did they have that funny cinematography just for effect, I was like,
well, she went outside to
yeah,
because
it was all upside down. It was like upside down. And as she was walking down the tunnel, the camera was revolving. And there was all this sort of ominous music. And she was like, why did they do that? Why didn't they just... And I said, because it makes it more dramatic. And she walked out. She walked out of the temple into the clearing. And then she was like, put her hands out, and she like called all of them. And they all came up like a flock of birds. And she's like, send them out and said, find me an army. And then this was the other thing, suspension of disbelief. So Zoe goes, where's she going to find an army? They're in the middle of the bloody jungle. And she's like, they're in the middle of nowhere. And I was like, yeah, but there might be indigenous people. There might be like tribal people that live in the Amazon that she takes over. She only needs
All they have to do is take
bodies
them
for
over.
now.
Yeah.
It's like, it doesn't matter what
Bodies.
they are. It's like they don't have to fly miles to the nearest city. They just
She
need
should
to
have
find
waited a little bit
humans.
longer, then she would have found out what she was doing.
Yeah, but I have things to say when we get to that bit. But at the time I was like, oh, don't overthink it. They'll be people, and she'll find people, and she just needs them for the time being.
So anyway, back at the lighthouse, they'd made the cuffs, and they said, well, we need to get them to Yo-Yo Mac. And Deke had an idea.
And then he also had a confession.
You won't like the idea. Pardon?
He also had a confession to make.
Yeah, you won't like my idea. Come with me. And then he opened this door, and there's a room full of all his techie guys from his business.
Company. Yep.
And he goes, I have this thing. And the woman unveiled it called the Shore Drive, a.k.a. the Jump Drive.
Yep.
And Fitz was fuming. We was like, aye, great.
And he's like, you're taking all this stuff and taking credit for it, and you set up a company just to make profit from it, make money. Yeah, but you told me, Bobo, you told me that was how you do it. And then Simmons is in the middle, and she's like, well, you two just cut it out. I'm not going to tell you again, and all this. And they were both sulking. Oh, it was so funny.
It was hilarious.
What I want to know though is how did he get all those people in there in the first place without anyone knowing?
I don't know. This was hilarious.
Man.
Like, where did they come from?
Yeah.
And anyway, so he goes to them, right. He goes, oh, it's about the jump drive. And he goes, oh, we've tested it on mice. And some of them died, some of them didn't die. I said, you not tested it? And Fitz was having a right old fit.
Yeah.
Fitz having a fit.
Fit was having a fit.
And he goes, doesn't matter. As long as it gets me where I need to go. And he goes, told to his crew, he goes, help Nana and Bobo. And he got in the thing, and he just zoomed off. And he ended up in the temple.
Wait, hold up. Before we get to that bit, one thing I really loved about this moment. So they're all there doing this stuff, and he basically explained that he had kind of reconfigured the jump drive to be like a portable, like teleportation device. And they're like, oh, I can't get it to it. You don't even know how this works. This isn't your technology. You didn't create this, blah, 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 blah. And he lost his temper, and he's like, do you know what? Do you know the reason I did all this? Do you know the reason I set up this company? Because everybody shut me out. You were gone. You didn't even tell me Fitz was dead. The girl that I really like, who I used to bring oranges for, doesn't care about me. And while he's having his rant and his meltdown, he's going around unplugging things, plugging things in, doing all this stuff without even really thinking about it. He's just doing it. Yeah. Then that's when you go, he might seem like an idiot half the time, but he's actually a genius because he fixed it without even really concentrating on what he was doing. And then he put it on, still ranting away, and all these people are gathering around him, and they're like, wait, Deke, wait. And he's like, no, I've had enough of this. I've had enough of everybody. Oh, Deke, pushing Deke out. Deke doesn't get involved in stuff, so I'm going to have to deal with this myself. And he presses the button, shum, he's gone. And they're like, what?
And they all clapped.
Yeah, and they're like, well done, sir. Hooray, you're awesome.
Yay, he's done it. And they're going, yeah, but...
And then he like appears.
So he got to the temple.
Yep. And he gets to the temple, and then he goes and finds them three, and then he helps free them, and then he gives them all the little bands to put on to protect them from Azel's power. And then he says, you get out of here, I'll keep them all stalled and everything. He's like, get out of here. And then that's when we got the reveal then, obviously, that the Shrike she'd sent out had inhabited, and this was my bugbear, okay? So my explanation would have been perfectly fine if you'd had all of these tribal jungle people coming in, because you're like, well, it makes sense, people do live in the Amazon. Instead, they all look like explorers. They were all people with like
well, they came from the resort.
Oh, is that where they came from? I missed that.
That's what they said. Yeah, they said that. They said he's obviously inhabited all the people from the nearby resort.
See, I missed that bit because I was just like, why are there all these people trekking around the jungle? Like, they're all in, like, explorer, like, shorts and T-shirts and things like that.
Yeah,
it's like, what are they all doing out in the jungle?
There's a resort nearby.
Well, that makes a little bit more sense then, yeah.
That helps you out. See, I listen.
But yeah, so it turned out they're all infected like zombies. And then we get loads of little zombie references to various mediums that have had zombies. You have the brilliant bit with Deke when he's like on the radio and he's like, "Hey, I've got an idea. I don't know if anybody's ever thought about this, but like you've got zombies chasing you, and it's like a video game, and you've got to try and take them out with various weapons and this, that, and the other." And Simmons is at the other end going, "That's a really good idea. I'm sure nobody's thought of that one," and all this lot. It's like, yeah,
Yeah, but
every
he
zombie
found he
video
couldn't.
game ever.
Yeah, so he found he couldn't jump again
Because he tried,
because,
but he only jumped to the other end of the room.
and they said you have to charge the battery, and they said that might take up to half an hour or so, wasn't it? And
Yeah,
half an hour,
yeah.
something like that. He went, "Cheers for telling me that." I said, "Well, you didn't listen, did you?" And obviously that was him. So anyway, Sergeant, May and Daisy arrived, didn't they?
Yeah.
And they also were surrounded by these zombie shrikes because she had summoned them.
Yeah. And they saw on their like devices, they scanned the area and they formed like a perimeter around the temple.
Yeah, yeah. So that was a bit of a fight, which was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then Sergeant May was supposed to head to the temple once Daisy had led them away with her quaking.
Mm-hmm.
So they're like waiting for this. And he said, didn't he kill a zombie? And he killed him like loads of times. Went, too much?
Yeah, and she then was like...
Is that overkill? And he smiled and she sort of looked at him like...
That's Coulson. That's a Coulson thing.
That's Coulson.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that was like for us from episodes previous, we go, that's what Coulson would have said.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So they managed to get out of the temple, but was being chased. So he's headed, and then he got told, head for the Quinjet. So there was a Quinjet planted. He goes, "Where's Quinjet? Follow the sun. Which way's the sun? West."
Yeah. But before he escaped, he was able to get into the temple because he heard all this singing. And he went in and he's like, "Oh, this bit annoyed me
he
as well.
the camera, didn't he?
This bit annoyed me, okay? So you see Azelle, and she's in her like jumpsuit thing she was wearing, and then she starts unzipping it, and then it cuts away from her, and you see Deke, and he's running through the corridors, escaping the zombies, and he finds his way into like an upper level of that same room, and he sees her, and when we see her again, she's wearing like some kind of weird priestess outfit, and it's like, so what, was she supposed to have had that on under the jumpsuit the whole time? Like, I was like, what the hell's going on here? Like, that was weird.
I didn't even notice that bit.
Yeah, I just was like, I don't get this. What did she have that on the whole time and she was hiding it under the jumpsuit? But anyway, he sets up a camera and he's like,
picky.
yeah, picky, I know. But he's like, can you see this? Can you see what I'm seeing? And they're like, what's going on? And you can see the three monoliths were all like going all wibbly. They were like almost becoming like liquid. They were like waves going up and down them while she was singing.
Yeah.
And then they're like, get out there. So he got out there, like you said, he ended up outside, head for the Quinjet, and off he went.
So with what happened obviously she got the monoliths opened this like portal in this round bit in the stone.
Yeah.
And then they reformed, didn't they?
Yeah, because
he had gone by then.
They like
so
literally
Sergeant
turned
May
into...
arrived.
They literally turned into like water, and it was almost at one point she looked like an angel because they flowed up behind her and the image made it look like she had wings for a moment.
Yeah.
And then it surged past her into this circle, created this portal, and then they all flew. They all like flowed back past her and reformed back into solid things.
Yeah.
We also saw the other three
get
back to the Zephyr.
Oh yeah, Daisy got back on the plane, didn't she? And she told them about it.
Yeah.
And she goes, "We've got to get out of here." And then obviously they got it because obviously they always leave that bloody hangar open, don't they?
Yes, and something got in.
So obviously all the zombies got in. It's like, what?
So yeah, that was like,
really?
Oh dear.
So then Sarge and May had got. So Sarge got to Azelle, but he couldn't use the sword on her. He got her and he knocked her out. And he's like, "Gotta kill her." Now I already had a thought of this, but hey ho. So she's trying to get to Sarge.
Yeah.
May's trying to get him to listen to her.
And she's like, "Look at me,
saying,
look at me."
His pain is love.
And then he's like, "You're right.
You're right.
It is love, and now I know what I have to do." And then he stabbed her with the sword.
I know, and threw her into the portal.
And I'm just like, what the hell just happened? I was like, oh my God. We were in such shock when that happened. We were like, I can't believe he just did that. And yeah, and like you said, he threw her through the portal, and it's like, oh my God.
I know.
And he's like, now I'm unburdened from that. And she like looked at him and smiled, and you're like,
smiling,
oh.
yeah. you've done what I wanted to. Then it went, we'll return in a moment.
And we also had, because he also then said the name of the episode, and he said that was the sign that they were waiting for on the other side. That'll be their sign. And then Iselle came and she like hugged him or like cuddled up to him or whatever. And then we'll continue. And then we got to see Enoch, and he was in the bar again on Kitson.
I know. And he was met by Isaiah, one of his followers, and he was asking him if they sorted it out, they're going to do the right thing. And he tells him that all the Chronicons have turned into hunters, and he started showing him all the stuff on the tablet.
Yep.
And one of them was him.
Yes.
And the next thing, something happened. I just went, no!
And it just faded to black, didn't it?
And that was it. I was like, no!
So, it's like, oh my God, all these things. That was like such a shocking episode. And you're like, oh.
Because obviously he's supposed to be the saviour. Enoch, yes, we're all right. We got something to gonna save him. And then this happened.
But luckily, we didn't have long to wait.
No.
So we then move on to
resumed in episode 13.
Called New Life.
Yes. And we had Fitzsimmons and the crew had saw what Sarge did, killing May. But see, then that's when I had my theory.
I had a theory too. Let's see if yours was the same as mine.
Well, I didn't think it. I thought there was a reason why he did it.
Yep.
He knew the consequences. That's what.
Yeah, I said at the time, like, because obviously when we watched that part of the episode, I was like, oh my God, me and Zoe were in shock. And then before we watched the next one, I went, wait, what if he did that on purpose? What if he knew the only way to beat Iselle was to do that? Because if he sends her through to the other side, she's gonna buy into him being on her side, and then May is gonna gain some kind of power from being in the other side, and then they're going to be able to join forces and they're going to be able to defeat Iselle because they tricked her. So I was like, that's what my thought process was, that he's done it for a reason, and it's actually going to be a swerve in the story that we're going to think, oh no, he's a baddie, but then it's like, no, he wasn't a baddie at all.
Yeah, because when I watched this, I thought about that when it happened, but then I thought when I started watching the next episode, I thought, I don't think he wanted her to die, and there was a reason why he threw her through the portal as well.
Yeah.
Because he was just going to kill her and left her there, couldn't he?
Mm-hmm.
So now we have Daisy knows about what happened to May.
Yeah.
Oh, the comms got locked out.
Yeah, because everybody saw it because of the cameras, and then the lighthouse suddenly just went into lockdown. And it's like, what the hell's going on? Why is everything switched off? They can't communicate with Daisy and Mac and Yo-Yo now. Why? What's happening? And then
because
you got
the Chronicon hunters have moved.
Yep. So shot of the hallway, and then one of them discs appears in the hallway, and out comes the main one, and then loads of those discs appeared, and they all just start appearing in the hallway. And it's like, oh my God, this isn't good.
And then they got into the main bit where the Simmons are.
Yep.
And started shooting the place up, didn't they?
Yeah, they shot the guy.
Point, I thought Fitz had been hit. This guy. That's who it was.
They shot the guy, guy that was Deke's friend.
Yeah, I know, because I saw some guy go flying across. I went, "Was that Fitz? Somebody important."
Yeah.
Somebody that had died.
Mm-hmm.
Daisy was obviously she's on the main ship. Is it what's it called?
On the Quinjet.
What's
or
the big ship?
Zephyr.
The Zephyr, and she's now feeling really bad about what she thought about Sarge. Thinking, I thought there was Coulson in there. If Coulson was in there, he would have done that.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Mac tried to make her feel better about it, and she was like, "Don't take that back," because in the previous one he'd had a go at her about bringing Coulson or Sarge along, and then when he was trying to console her, she was like, "Don't take it back. You were right. You were right to be annoyed at me. I was stupid. I let sentimentality." Because he said all this stuff about the devil. And he said about how the devil tricks you and makes you think that it's what you want to see, and he tells you all the right things.
You want to see, exactly.
Because obviously Mac is very religious, and so he's leaning into that and saying, he just put on a face for you, and you saw what he wanted you to see because he was playing on your emotions, and now it's been revealed. And she's like, "You're right, Mac," and he's like, "No, don't." And she's like, "No, don't take it back. I have to live with this now. This is my fault. I allowed this to happen. I shouldn't have been so stupid, but I'm not going to make that mistake again."
Yeah. So then we also had Deke got to the other Quinjet that was parked. He said, "I'm here now.
Yep.
What do I do?"
And they had to then
And he goes,
tell
"Well,
him
you
how
have
to
to
fly
fly
it.
They goes, flying's easy. It's the parking. It's like the landing that's going to be the hard thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then the zombies were on there, weren't they?
Yes.
Pulling all the stuff. It's like, that thing, I don't think I could use that now because some zombie guy had pulled some control out. And he goes, it's in the floor. And he sort of sent him to another bit. And he's like, okay, we're off and running. It's hilarious.
Yeah, and as he was like, he had his
Watching it is
hand in the
hilarious.
floor. He had his hand in the floor and he's twiddling around. And then there was another zombie and it reached out for him. And then what was really funny about that bit was he bit a zombie.
Yeah.
Because normally it's the other way around, isn't it? Zombies bite you, but he bit the zombie in order to get it to let go of his hand. Oh, that was so funny. And then he's like, right, let's go. And then he's like, what do I do? And they're like, do this thing. And they give him all the controls. And he's like, oh, I really wish I hadn't got the other guy to do all the simulation flying and all this art. So he's going to do his best. So he took off in the Quinjet trying to get to them. And then we had obviously all the zombies taken over the Zephyr. And they were trying to keep them out and trying to fight them. And then a horrible thing happened. Because there weren't just zombies, were there? There was also Shrike. And you had this awesome moment. So you had this awesome moment where they go into the corridor and Yo-Yo's like, where did they go? They were here a minute ago. Where could they go? And they were like, they could go in this room. No, they wouldn't go through the engine room. There's only one other place they could go to. And then you get this like explosion and they come out of the weapons room. And you've got 3 Shrike zombies with weapons. And then you had this really cool moment. And did this not remind you of The Flash? Because for me, the music that started up and the way it happened where it all went slow-mo as she fired 3 bullets, and I was like, it's a bit like, you know, in The Flash when it does the that music, it was a bit like that. And you saw this like bullet time thing of these 3 bullets going towards 3 different zombies, and then it sped back up again and went choo 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 and killed them. And Daisy's like, I didn't know you could do that. And then she's sort of like, oh well. And then a Shrike flew in and straight into her mouth. And it was like, oh, shit, this isn't good.
We know what happens when that happens.
Yeah, and that was horrible.
So well, yeah, because obviously then, meanwhile, at the lighthouse, the hunters have taken over the lighthouse.
Yeah.
The Simmons got hid away, didn't they?
Mm-hmm. And they were on about the protocols, and they said the protocol for this kind of thing is to head to this floor, and, you know, there's an exit strategy and stuff. So they do that, but then when they get there, there's all loads of dead people. And they're like, how did they know? And then they went, it dawned on them. They were trying to get hold of
Enoch, wasn't they?
Yeah, and they couldn't get hold of Enoch. It was going to his voicemail.
Yeah.
And then they were trying to figure out, how did they know about all of this? Nobody knows this outside of S.H.I.E.L.D. because it's a verbal thing. It's not written down anywhere. And then they went, oh, they were inside our minds. And then they realised this is how they found out. So now they know everything about S.H.I.E.L.D., about S.H.I.E.L.D. protocol. So they're like, we need to do something that they wouldn't think of, something that they wouldn't know about.
Yeah. So they told all the other guy, the lady, and that said, get them all to Deke's lab. They didn't know that existed. So get them all in there. They're safe. And they decided, so we got to go do something else. Meanwhile, back at the temple, Isaiah is happy with Sarge's actions.
Yeah.
And where is May? Those statue things on the other side, like monoliths, but people sort of monoliths.
Oh my God, that was creepy.
Started moving. Oh, that was creepy.
Because they were like Grim Reaper-y sort of things, weren't they? And all raggedy hooded clothing, all stood, like you said, they were stood on the same plinths that the monoliths are on. And then they all came forward, and they were all weird-looking aliens, and they were approaching her. And it was like, oh my God, look how much blood she's lost. She's got to be dead. And they all come towards her, and you're like, oh my God, what's going to happen?
Because they went towards that, there was like a plinth in the middle. They had to put the stones in order to
open the
activate
doorway.
Yeah. So they were doing that, and then the next thing we know, at the temple, the things come flying through.
Well,
so it did activate the circle.
We didn't quite get that, but didn't you get the bit where she looked through the hole?
Oh, she saw she shot through the hole that they were putting the things in, wasn't it?
And there was like a massive, almost like a desert, and there was legions.
Oh, there's all those things coming towards.
Yeah.
She saw the creatures coming, and she went, and so she threw the stones through. them all out of that thing and threw them through.
Yeah, so clearly she'd
we went-
killed the 3 hooded figures.
Like, yay, she's alive.
And then Iselle was questioning Sarge about his motives and, about her not dying and this, that, and the other. And they had a bit of a fight, didn't they? And then you got the bit...
Yeah, you should be healed in the other side. Your girl at the other side. She realised, didn't she, that he'd done it, knowing that because it's the new world, that she'd just be healed again. And that was a massive fight, wasn't it?
And he lost his temper with her and slammed her up against the wall. And then we got another reveal in the fact that he's the leader. Because he said... Because obviously he's now regained the memories of whatever he was. And he's like, when I sent you out on this mission, you were meant to do X, Y, and Z. And you're like, wait, when he sent her out? So all this time we thought she was the leader. But the reality is he's the leader. He's the one behind all of this. And then you kind of got the feeling that it was a king and queen dynamic. That like he was the king, she was his queen. But he was still like superior to her. And... he was like, this was my plan, this was my idea, and I sent you out there to get the monoliths and put all this in motion, and then I had to come into this myself because you weren't doing the job properly. And then she's like, oh, you've got soft, I'm going to have to take control of this myself and all this lot. And you're like, oh my God, this is a real twisting everything now that I thought up until this point. So, yeah, and then obviously...
and then she said, I'm going to go through the portal and I'll sort this out myself.
Yep.
I'll put those things back on. Yeah, so she went through there.
Mm-hmm.
Back in the lighthouse, the Fitzsimmons crew, well, obviously got everyone safe. They went, right, well, we've got to destroy all our research.
And they said specifically...
the Chronicons are going to take over.
Specifically all the mind tech, so they had to get rid of all the framework stuff.
So they got, the framework. So they got in there, so that's their plan. And they decided, well, we've got no one to pull a switch, so we're going to have to just do it here.
Yep.
They got like a
grenade, hand grenade.
Grenade, yeah, got a grenade. And they were all ready, and they pulled the thing out, and then all of a sudden...
And the baddies came into the room, and they were crouched down in the corner together, holding this grenade, and then the baddies, suddenly, somebody shot them.
Yeah.
And you're like, what the hell? And then
this guy, we remember seeing...
Isaiah...
Isaiah came and put the pin back in.
And then did you twig right at that moment? Did you twig?
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. And then he spoke, didn't he? And then you're like...
He says that they've got to change the natural course of their their lives forever. I had to take
drastic action and realise that sometimes...
Bold action.
Bold action. And what did he say? Sometimes you realise that you have to let go of your body or something along those lines. So basically, the implication was...
you have to kill somebody and take over a body. And
yeah. So it's like Enoch had inhabited this other person, this Isaiah, in order to be able to infiltrate. And then he said, yeah, I've got this plan that's going to fix everything, but you're not going to like it. It's going to require you to make this big sacrifice. And it's like, and alter the natural course of your life forever. And you're like, what the hell has he got in mind? And while he was talking, he was moving all these things, wasn't he?
Yeah, but when he said it, they both went, that again.
Yeah, they didn't seem like they were like, oh, okay. Like, yeah, this sort of thing happens to us all the time.
That. So we got Mac and Daisy and Yo-Yo headed towards the temple.
Mm-hmm. And they try and have a showdown with Pachacuti, let's say, for now.
Yeah.
So they try, and we got to see what he really looked like.
Mm.
And he was like some weird kind of insect man sort of thing, wasn't he?
Yeah. Obviously, bullets didn't work. Yo was struggling because she was obviously turning into this thing.
And Daisy's quake powers weren't holding him back.
There was a fight on both sides of the portal. We had May having a fight with Isaiah, and then we had Mac and Sarge on the other side of the portal.
Yeah.
So cool fight. So
really good choreography and stuff.
Awesome.
Yeah. So yeah.
And then Blue and Isaiah got away.
Yes, she did, because she managed to knock down May, and then she ran to the podium and put the 3 stones in, and then she went out back through the portal, and you saw all these people started approaching May from the portal on that side, and you're like, oh no, this is not good at all. And that was like, uh-oh, this is trouble. And then you get back to the other side, and basically he's defeated all of them. So, and Yo-Yo was changing, and Mac went over to her, and he's like, stay with me, And then then the possession happened, didn't it? And he she got taken control of. She grabbed Mac by the throat, and then Sarge is like, "Oh, there you are. Thank you for joining us," or something. And then he was then having a fight with Daisy, and then it was like they're defeated. And Izelle comes through, and she stands there, really like, "It's done. They can't stop us now." And you see a sword come through her, and her body gets kicked to the ground, and there's May behind her. And you're like, yes, go on, May. And because then she killed her, it then destroyed the Shrike, because obviously she created the Shrike. So Yo-Yo starts vomiting up all this black goo and lets go of Mac. And it's like, oh, so she's now okay. And then you're like, yay, they're going to win now. And then May collapses to the floor. Daisy just powers up, and she's like, rah. And then they just go full-on assault against...
And Mac just sliced him in half.
Yeah, because he got the sword, didn't he?
Yeah, he sliced Sarge in half, and it's just like bits everywhere.
And it just went,
and the next thing you know, they're like, Simmons arrived.
Yep.
Don't worry, she'll be fine. Grab me, she'll be fine.
We'll put her in a machine, and we'll regrow her tissue and all this kind of stuff.
They took samples of the monoliths before they destroyed. They said, don't worry about this place, but they took like samples of them, didn't they?
Yeah, they drilled out, didn't they? Drilled pieces out. And she was really weird, because she was like in a suit, and her hair was all pulled back, and she was very, like, cold, not cold, but like sharp and to the point of like, chop, chop, come on, like almost like a Mary Poppins nanny.
She goes, I don't know and I can't know where he is.
Yeah.
So it's like, what did Enoch say to them? So they got them all out. Then they got back to the lighthouse.
They got on the Zephyr, and she explained...
Oh, on the Zephyr.
So much has changed, and she said, we lost the lighthouse is gone. And then she said, but it wasn't... We learned... They were like, how did you do all this? Because they're looking around the ship. The Zephyr's been upgraded. There's now a jump drive in the Zephyr. And they're like, how did you manage this? And she's like, we had time. And you're like, oh.
Had time, didn't she?
And then as they walked ahead, she then said, we learned that the lighthouse wasn't the only target of interest for the Chromicons. And then we got the explanation. They were hoping to make Earth into Chromica 3. So it's like, okay, Chromica 3 was going to be here. They were going to take over our planet. And she said, so we had to take bold action. And then she went to this computer, and then she spoke to Fitz. And she said about the coordinates, and he was like, Fitz's voice comes out of the computer and says, yeah, plotting a course for you now. Jump drive starts up just as they jump away into wherever. 2 kind of missiles come flying past them as they vanish, and they destroy the temple. So that's gone. So you're like, wait, what's going on here? This is all moving at such a fast pace. What is happening? And it was great because we were as confused as our main characters were, because they were also like, what's going on? Why is everything like this? What's happened? And she's sort of talking at a million words a minute, isn't she? Sort of saying, this, we have to do this. And then Enoch had a plan, and Enoch came to us, and we had to make all these choices, and it required us to do this, this, and this, and then they like reappeared somewhere.
Time.
Yeah, and she kept saying about we had time to do all this, and they reappear somewhere, and they're a skyline. Where are we? And they're looking on the maps, and then they go, wait, New York City, but there's a lot more cloud cover and a lot more fog than usual. Okay. So they're going along, and they're trying to work out what's going on, and May gets put into obviously was put into a stasis pod and everything like that.
Yeah, you got a mask of her oxygen mask and all this stuff. They had it all planned what they were going to do when they got them back.
Yep, and then she explains about the Chromicons obviously knowing everything about S.H.I.E.L.D. now, because they were able to get Fury's black box. And she said, so now they know everything that S.H.I.E.L.D. knows. And she's like, well, not quite everything. And she said, we had to then make a hard choice. We had to decide on something that would change the course of things and that would allow us to combat them. And the only thing we knew to do, somebody that knew more than Fury and knew all of Fury's secrets, we had to... And she was talking all this very cryptically, but enough that you knew where she was going with it. And it was all this stuff about Enoch's idea.
We kept seeing Enoch with clothes and stuff, didn't we?
Yeah, and he was like laying out shoes and a tie.
Stuff
and
together, yeah.
It was like a suit and a tie and shoes and shoe polish and all of this stuff. And she's very, promptly telling them, leading them through the ship. And she's like, we used the technology, the Chromicon technology, along with the LMD like technology we had from the framework and from Ada, and with what was it, like recorded memories and stuff that they'd extracted from the framework, we were able to recreate, and it's not quite the same person, but it's a close enough approximation for what we need.
And because she misses him.
And because I miss him, and now you have to make a choice whether or not.
She put this switch down on the table, didn't she? They had to make a decision whether you want to go with what we've decided.
And within a matter of seconds, Daisy went bang.
Daisy just bang.
And then you get this tube. And they're stood there looking at this tube, and it lights up gradually, bit by bit, and then the camera zooms in and the tube opens, and who is inside?
Yay, our man's back, Coulson!
Agent Coulson.
And we all went, yeah!
Yes, and he did that smile. The smile he does, you know, the way that he has that sort of, just that nice kind of smiley face.
Sideways grin, isn't it?
Yeah, and he looks up and then he's like, hey guys. And you're like, oh, it's him, it's the proper Coulson. I mean, we know it's not him, he's a robot, but it's like he's basically the proper Coulson. But I just found it very interesting, the fact that he's not director Coulson, he's not the Coulson that ended up being the Coulson he was before he died. He's Agent Coulson, as in Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. So Mac is still in charge, and he's now going to be Mac's right-hand man.
Yeah.
But he has all of Coulson's memories, and he knows everything.
So
it was like, what a brilliant way of bringing him back.
I don't care how they brought him back, as long as they brought him back.
It was awesome.
That's
so now
I'm
so excited about what they're going to do for the final season. Because you think about this for a start, okay? First things first. The other thing we didn't mention, yes, so we got the reveal of where they were, because they were like, oh, I can see the Empire State Building. Wait, there are no other buildings above the skylight. What? Why is it the tallest building?
Tallest building
and
or something.
Simmons is like, well, I think at the moment it's the tallest building in the world. And you're like, wait a second. They're
gone in different timelines.
Yes, they're not just they haven't just traveled to New York. They've traveled to New York in the past. And you're like, wow. So this is interesting now, okay? Because in that era of Marvel history, you have got Agent Peggy Carter, who is the person that basically forms S.H.I.E.L.D. in the first place. And
Agent Carter?
Yeah, Agent Carter is in that time period. So I reckon we're going to get to see Hayley Atwell make a guest appearance in the next season. Because think about it. They're in the past. They are S.H.I.E.L.D. They need allies. Who do they need to go to for help? Who can they trust? S.H.I.E.L.D. So who's running S.H.I.E.L.D. in that timeline? Agent Carter. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, that's going to be cool.
Yeah,
and also the other potential, I wouldn't be surprised now, because it's the final season. I reckon we're going to get everything thrown at us. I think we're going to get to see cameos and guest appearances from faces from the past. I wouldn't be surprised. We'll see Bobby and Hunter will probably make a reappearance. We may even get to see Ward. They might even have some Ward cameo of some kind. Because, you know, he played such a big part of the early...
Even if it's just in their memory.
Yeah. You know, any other sort of notable people along the way, we might get... what's his name? What's your man? Your man that was in it. The Scottish fella. No, not him. Yeah, him as well. But the guy that was to do with the framework, that was Fitz's mentor. What's his name? It's not James Nesbitt. He's the Scottish James Nesbitt.
Oh, I know who you mean. John Hannah.
John Hannah, that's it. Thank you. Yes. I wonder if he'll make a guest appearance and, you know, any kind of notable faces across the history of this program. So it's exciting. I'm really excited to see what they do in this final season. And are they going to pay off the teasers? Because one thing I will say I'm disappointed about, for the last 3 or 4 episodes, they kept name-dropping Ghost Rider. They kept saying, oh, Robbie Reyes, Ghost Rider. This is like what we encountered with Ghost Rider. So I kept waiting for him to show up in the finale.
Because you said about the new program coming.
Yeah. So now, one of two things here. They either did it as a way of sort of promoting the fact that he's got a series by going, let's get his name back out there to remind people about him, or it's potentially a setup for him making a guest appearance in the final season, something along those lines.
We'll have to see.
Yeah. But it was great. It was so good.
It was brilliant.
And I'm so glad we got to watch it so close together.
Yeah. It was good, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was brilliant. So there we go, guys. So that's Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 6 done and dusted.
Till the next time.
Until next year. Yeah, next summer when it returns for its final season. Oh, it's exciting.
It is.
Something I need to throw in quickly because it's comic book related. I should have said this at the beginning, but I found a little bit more thing out about the Arrowverse Crisis on Infinite Earths thing.
Okay.
I can't remember whether I mentioned this on the last podcast or not. Burt Ward, who was Robin.
Yeah.
The original Robin from the...
I didn't mention it before.
Okay. So Burt Ward, who was Robin in the original TV show of Batman years ago, he's going to be in the crossover.
Ooh.
As Robin.
Ooh.
So how cool is that? What's
Cool.
really sad about it, though, is the fact that obviously Adam West is dead. So you can't have him. But they are apparently going to reference him. They're going to reference that Batman and stuff like that. So it's like, wow, that's awesome. Yeah. They've also confirmed that we're going to get Batman in this crossover. And it's going to be the long-running Batman animated series that has been going for years and years and had Mark Hamill as the voice of the Joker in and stuff like that. The guy that does the voice, or did the voice, should I say, because it's not on anymore, but the guy that did the voice for Batman and that, Kevin Conroy, has been confirmed to play an older version of Batman in this crossover. Oh. So that's quite cool as well. They seem to be, they're pulling out all the stops for this crossover. And they have also said the last, however many episodes it is of Arrow, was it 6 or 8?
I don't know.
It's one or the other, it's 6 or 8. Each one of them is going to effectively be like a mini event that is all going to be connected to and laying seeds and building into the Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover. So it's going to be like Arrow is going to be driving this crossover. So that's going to be really exciting.
That's really strange to say.
I was just going to say the other thing is that though they're gonna keep us in suspense because they're splitting the crossover up. So we're going to get 3 parts of it before the end of the year, and then we got to wait until January for the final 2 parts.
Oh, no. But it's really funny you should say that. A friend of mine I work with, she likes all the programs we watch, and she's got behind on some of them. I go, you need to catch up for October.
Yeah.
It's all going to be relevant. Otherwise you won't know what's going on in October.
Do you want to know?
I will.
Do you want to know something else really exciting?
What?
Our guy that we watch, but we haven't talked about on the podcast, but Black Lightning is going to be part of the crossover.
Whoa.
Yes.
Oh my days.
So they're finally bringing in Black Lightning into the Arrowverse proper.
Brilliant.
Because he tweeted a picture out of it wasn't a picture of them on set, but it was a picture of like the Arrowverse kind of thing with a picture of Black Lightning next to it, and he was like, well, I guess you've all been asking for it for a while, and that's all he said. And then it was just kind of like, okay, so they've now and then they've since confirmed it and said, yes, indeed, Black Lightning is joining the Arrowverse for the Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover, and it was like, oh, that's so cool.
Oh, brilliant.
So this is just building to be so exciting. And apparently, also, Legends of Tomorrow is going to start at the end of the crossover. So the final part of the crossover, so the 5th part of it, is going to be the Legends of Tomorrow one. And that is going to be that's going to spin off into their series. So their series isn't back until January. And the final part of the crossover is going to be like what leads into the new season of Legends of Tomorrow.
Awesome.
So that's pretty cool.
Cool. Ooh.
So lots of exciting stuff to look forward to in a few months' time.
Indeed. Indeed.
So that's obviously comic book news. The only other thing quickly is that I haven't actually watched it yet, but a trailer has come out now for the 2nd season of Titans. So when you get a minute, have a look at that. And apparently there's loads of new faces and things like that. It doesn't really reveal much of the plot. It just gives you a teaser of this is what's to come and look at all these new characters that are going to be in it and stuff like that. So we need to check that out.
Will we be using that one eventually?
Oh yeah, I think so. I think we'll have to talk about
You just
Titans.
have to summarise season 1, won't you?
Yeah,
other things,
and
so.
talking about summaries, a bit further on down the line at some point in the not too distant future, we'll have to do a special podcast just where we chat a little bit about Jessica Jones, because I'm now 5 episodes into the final season. So we'll do a little bit of a review, an overview of what we thought of the final season, how it sat in amongst all the other shows, what kind of legacy it left behind in terms of the Marvel Netflix shows, that kind of thing. Just like a general overview, just to give our thoughts on the end of that chapter of the Marvel TV universe before the new chapter kicks
Disney
off.
takes over.
Yeah. So yes, but yes, while we're on the subject of comic books and things and Marvel, that brings us on to Legion, which is our next program to talk about. And this is the 6th episode called Chapter 25, which had very much like a fairy tale feel to it, didn't you think?
Oh, it's brilliant.
Would you like to begin? Would you like to start the story?
So
Once
clever.
upon a time.
Yeah, once upon a time, in an opening like a foresty type area, a man is collecting things people have thrown away.
Yes.
I recognise this man from a previous episode, and he's in the astral plane apparently.
Yes.
And it's where people who have lost their minds end up.
Yeah, where lost things in general end up going to the astral plane, and this man who's out in simple peasant gear, like I say, in a forest, collecting things up in a wheelbarrow and things like that, turns out to be Oliver, who is a character that we haven't seen for quite a while in Legion, and he's the one that was living in the astral plane to begin with in the first season, that sort of was helped David to sort of get a grip more on his mental condition and things like that, and he helped kind of guide him to becoming more of a whole person again. And they've been absent. Oliver and his wife, Melanie have been absent from the show, and it's because they've been living in the astral plane.
Okay, so he's picking up stuff, and along his way he finds a baby.
Mm-hmm.
And when he finds the baby, he puts it in the trolley, and he's using to collect things, and he meets a wolf along the way home.
Yes, called Jerome.
And he wants the baby, called Jerome. He said he wants it, but he says he can't have the baby. And he tells Oliver to tell the child about the Holocaust. Don't forget to tell her about the Holocaust and the STDs, which I thought was hilarious.
Yeah.
So he took the baby back, and his wife Melanie came out, and she chased the wolf away. And then that was a reveal, because then they closed out away from the house, and they're in a window box.
Yes, because it was really good, because it did that panning outwards thing. So it panned out from the woods, which was then in like a bigger, like greenery area, which came out even further, and it turned out it was like a plant, and then it panned out even more, and that plant was in mud, and it panned out even more, and it was a window box, and it panned out even more, and that window box was on the side of an apartment overlooking a New York City street, let's say.
Oh my days!
It's like,
this is hilarious.
Wow, this whole little world is embedded
so clever.
deep within one of these plants in a window
window
box. Yeah.
So
and also,
just
for context as well, for those that didn't see it, when we say wolf, it wasn't a wolf as in an animal. It was a man, very much like, I would say, like an Oliver Twist villain. It was like a top hat, a suit, that kind of thing. But he was very animalistic in his nature, in the way he behaved. And he kind of was a bit beardy, and he looked a bit like subtle wolf kind of makeup.
Also like a werewolfy type.
Yeah. But not like a wolf as in on all fours. Like, it wasn't like a talking animal.
No, it was a man dressed like a werewolfy type thing. So anyway, he took the baby and brought the baby in, and and he told his wife, the baby's called Sydney. How do you know? She told me.
Yeah.
What else did she say? Nothing. She's a baby. I thought, oh, that was so funny.
Mm-hmm.
So the wolf tries to knock the house down, because he started blowing, like in the Little Pigs, he was like blowing the house down.
Yeah, and wasn't the house made of straw or something?
Yeah, he said he did that. He said it's made of straw, not paper like the last one. So he's not going to be able to do this one.
Mm-hmm.
So then he was banging on the door, and he opened the door, and he was outside, and he had a good little young girl with him called Cynthia.
Yes.
She was hopeless, and they decided, Melanie said, we're taking her. And they were all, he says, that's soup I smell. He said, yes, but you're not getting any. Shut the door on him. And they said they didn't want the real world to get in. And then she said, we need to move.
Yeah, because of the wolf hanging around. Because you start getting the sense that this wolf is not necessarily an actual physical he's like some kind of corrupting force, like, I don't know, almost like
Yes.
the devil or something, like he's like evil. He's just like a manifestation of evil that tempts and tries to get
Tempts you into your bad
things.
ways, and they
Yeah.
want to save this girl. So she went, no, gotta move.
Hmm.
So then we see Sid and Cynthia growing up. Cynthia's the girl, obviously. So they're the dad, Oliver, and the little girl wandering around picking up rubbish.
Mm-hmm.
And then she finds a headless doll.
Yep.
And she goes, I'm going to call it Hetty.
Eddie. Yeah.
And then she hears some noise and she like starts running towards it. He goes, not that way. And she gets too far. And then you can see they're obviously looking out of the window box into the city.
Yeah.
And he said it's called, I can't remember what he said it was called originally. He said that is something, can't remember, what was the name? What did he say?
I want to say something ridiculous like the albatross or the flamingo or something like that.
Yeah, it's like the ostrich or something
Yeah.
weird like that.
And then he was like, no, that's not the word for it. It's almost like he couldn't quite remember what it actually was called.
No, because he's been away for it so long. And he went, it's the city. And then he goes, I'll tell you about that another day, the real world about that another day.
Yeah.
So that's so cute. So that was the end of that. So then we had Melanie telling Sid a bedtime story about empathy. It's like about caring about things and people and stuff.
Yeah.
And the little girl started having bad dreams over it, didn't she?
Yes, and these
kept waking up in the night. It's like, oh, what's going on?
Yes, and it was interesting because there were lots of just weird flashes of traumatic experiences and scary things that were, really troubling her. So it was like,
And in the meantime, the wolf came. The girl Cynthia was outside. I think she was putting something like wood outside or getting wood.
Yeah.
And the wolf guy Jerome appeared again and enticed her with drugs.
Yeah, because he was talking about basically.
She'd be a drug addict, didn't she?
Yeah, and she said, I don't do that anymore. And he was like, oh, but your friends are waiting for you. And, you used to have such a good time. And he basically tempted her and corrupted her to come away with him. And then that was that. And then she was gone.
So he took her away, yeah. And then we had the little girl having more dreams. And in the dreams, she could see herself older. And David was in her dreams.
Yeah.
I saw the weird monster, the Shadow King.
Yeah.
And Melanie keeps thinking, I know that girl from somewhere. Where do I know her from?
I'm sure we've met her before. Yeah. And then she said, didn't she say to him, didn't we know her in the real world, in the outside world? And he's like, well, let's not think too much about that. This is where we live now. And, he was trying to sort of dissuade her from going down that route of thinking.
Yeah, because in the little girl's dream, part of it was when she saw David and all the Legion.
Yes.
The I Am Legion people getting her. So meanwhile, the wolf's hovering again and trying to blow the house down.
And then there was he made a hole in the roof or something? Because the light shone in when he was laying in bed, and he's like, we have to move again.
Goes, we have to move again. So they moved to the gutter.
Yeah, which was like a Victorian, Dickensian kind of city, wasn't it? It was very much like everybody was in Dickensian type clothing, and it was all like the poor areas where there's like prostitutes on the street corners and rubbish everywhere and stuff like that. And they had a little shop. Yeah,
that little shoe shop or something, wasn't it? Yeah. And we saw her.
She is now like a teenager, wasn't she?
Yeah, she was doing her maths, and he's talking to her, and she said she wanted to see the world. And he said, no, not really, I don't think it's the right time. We saw her wandering down the street looking for stuff like he does, rummaging. And she bumped into. First she found a heart in a box.
Yeah, that was weird.
The beating heart.
Yeah.
And then she looked up, and then was Cynthia, the girl that used to live with them, with a Mad Hatter looking boy.
And a very creepy little girl that seemed like an old woman. Girl, old woman in a little girl's body.
It goes, oh, these are my children. It's like, oh. They tried to coax her to go with them.
And the little girl was was she on about drinking, like having gin and stuff like that or something? And he was going, what did he have? Because he was almost like the Artful Dodger, and he had like a stuff in his coat.
That's what I said.
Didn't he like open his coat out?
I said the Mad Hatter, I meant to say the Artful Dodger.
But didn't he have stuff that he was like saying you can have? Oh, and he said about video games and all of this kind of stuff.
they were all like really violent ones, weren't they?
Yeah, and it was all stuff,
Violent video
again,
games
to
where
do
you
with the outside
touch
world.
people's head. But she sensed the wolf because she said, "Oh, Jerome would love to see you."
And there was a dark
And she sensed
alleyway.
it, didn't she?
And they looked down this
She
dark
said the wolf
alleyway.
was there.
Yeah, and at the end of this dark alleyway, it was almost like a furnace. There was this red glow, almost like the fires of hell, and then you saw the silhouette of him appear in the doorway. And she was like,
She
no, and
declined to go with them. And she said, "I don't want to go with you." And then when she got home, she goes, "I don't want to ever go to the real world now."
didn't the little girl also say to her, though, don't forget your heart, because a heart is a precious thing to come by, or something?
Yeah.
And she got really
So,
freaked
don't forget
out.
your heart.
Yeah.
So then Melanie told her about she can help change and save the world. She said, you can change things. You can help.
Yeah.
So she told her that. So Sid decided, well, I want to save Cynthia.
Mm-hmm.
So she got a bottle of booze, didn't she, for the kids?
Yeah.
She dropped that near the house,
Mm-hmm.
and the kids, oh, what's this? And the girl and the boy went off and started drinking that. And then Cynthia came out and they grabbed her, didn't they?
Yes.
Kidnapped her.
Mm-hmm. And they brought her back.
But
they brought her back to the house, and she was really like, kicking and screaming and everything. And she said about he's gonna know. And then, like you said, you saw him, and he was like sniffing the air and everything, wasn't he? And he saw them laid down and sniffed the bottle, and it's like he's got your scent now. He knows it was you.
It's coming, yeah. So it's hilarious. This is my favourite bit of the whole episode.
This was amazing.
Decided I'm going to challenge him.
Yep. So he goes out to the street.
He challenged Jerome the wolf to a rap battle.
Well, yeah, because before that bit, so he goes out to the street. They're stood facing off, and he's like, "Oh, you forget that I can do things. I may
His
not."
His clothes had changed. He looked like Oliver again, didn't he?
Yeah.
The white suit on.
And he's like, you forget that I can do things. I may not have shown my hand before, but I can still do things. I'm still powerful. And the wolf's like, bring it on, old man. And he's like, fine. If you want a challenge, then you'll have a challenge. And then all of a sudden it changes from this cobbled street to like a dingy club. And yeah, as you said, they had a rap battle to settle things. And it was fantastically hilarious. Lots of
so funny. Again, a visual thing. You need to watch it to enjoy it.
Yeah, lots of interesting comments made. Lots of bad language and lots of insults that we're not going to repeat.
Dissing and all that.
Yeah, but it was very amusing. And then it looked like the wolf had won, because then the wolf sort of stepped up and he's like, "I'm the big bad wolf. I'm this. I'm that." And he's like battering him into submission. And Oliver walked away. And he dropped the mic and he's like, "Hey, I've won. Come to me, Cynthia." And all the crowd's cheering the wolf. And then Oliver stops and turns round and he's like, "You forget who I am. I'm this and I'm that." And he's like, "I'm a wizard from," what's he saying? Like, "I'm a kung fu wizard from something," and all this lot. Yeah, and then he's like going on about, "My mother still sends me letters. I still have friends that care about me." And it's all this stuff about basically like, who do you have? Who cares about you? And it was playing on that thing of like, I might not be big and bad like you, but people care about me. People notice me. People pay attention to me. I don't have to kidnap people and trick people to get them to like me. And he basically battered him into submission by making the wolf feel awful about himself, to the point where the wolf burst into tears. And then Oliver's just like dropped the mic, and then he's just like, boom. And it's like, yeah, Oliver won. But then the girl came running forward and grabbed it, and she's like, "Please stop, you're killing him. Please don't kill him."
Did she?
Yeah, and she's like, "Please don't kill him. I love him." And Oliver's like, "What?" And then it was like, okay. So then it all went back to normal, and then Sid's like, "I don't understand. Why did you give up?" Really upset
because she said, "I tried." The mum said, "You tried though, didn't you? You did try.
But sometimes
you had empathy. You cared."
Yeah, sometimes there are some battles you can't win, and you have to accept people will make their choices, and this is just the choice that she made, and we have to leave her to it. So they went off, and she's like, "I can't accept this. I can't." And then she starts getting all these weird, like she's trying to remember something, and then that's when Oliver was like, "It's time."
Well, the mum looked at Melanie, saw Oliver in his white suit, and she went, "Does that mean it's time?"
Yeah.
And then she transformed into the older Melanie and went and stood by him.
And then the camera kind of went from one side where we got to see the teenage Sid, and then it went behind them, and when it came out the other side, she was Sid that we know, like from now.
Yeah. And they said she's ready to go back.
And she remembered
And they
everything.
said, it's us and it's not them and us, it's us and them or something.
Yeah. And they were like,
And then
you have
next
to
thing you know,
return, you're the one that's going to save everybody.
yeah,
You now have the tools that you need in order to make this right. So it's almost like this whole experience, this whole second life she lived in the astral plane was to prepare her for what she needs
what
to
was
do
to
now.
come, yeah.
And then she
Yeah.
woke up back on
On
the
the plane.
airship. Yeah.
Yeah. And she saw the time door, didn't she? And she was like, it was like going in and out, weird shapes.
Yeah.
And then we saw the two Carries.
Yeah.
The young Carrie wasn't dead.
Yeah.
Scientist Carrie. The Carrie, the scientist guy, had made this time bracelet, hadn't he?
Yeah.
For Switch and David. So she said, can you make some more? So he said, well, I'll make us all one.
Yeah.
And the door was doing something strange. And they thought, well, I don't know if it was the girl Carrie said, well, I think the time eaters are back, so we're going to have to hurry.
Yeah.
So the Carries had to do something. They had to merge or something because.
Well, yeah, because basically,
the girl was battered. And he said,
Girl Kerry was in bad shape, and it was like, you're the one whose skills are needed now. I've done my bit. I've repaired all of this. I've created these devices and everything, but now we need you. And she's like, no, I don't want to. And he's like, we have to. It's the only way. So they merged back into one person again, and then he basically took on all of her wounds and all of her injuries and her pain, and then and then he was in a wheelchair because he sat down in the chair, and then he was like in a really bad shape, and then Girl Kerry emerged from him again as like, and she was completely healed, and she's like, oh no, Kerry.
Well, Sid went through the door first, so then she pushed him through, didn't she, on the wheelchair? And it looked like she wasn't going to get through.
Because they all started appearing, the time demons.
Yeah, so she sort of did like a kickbox kick.
Yeah.
To open it again. She just got there just in time. It's like, they've all gone through the door just in time. Pardon the pun.
Yeah, pardon the pun. But where have they gone? So, yes. Very interesting. But it was such a cool episode. The concept of it all.
So clever.
Was really good. And like I said, it had this fairy tale quality to it all the way through. It just felt like I was watching, like almost like an episode of Once Upon a Time or something.
But like you were saying with our programme previous, they brought those people back that were important to the whole programme.
Yeah.
Obviously, Oliver and Melody were very important in series 1 into 2, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So the fact that they've included them in it, I thought that was so cool, and I like that. And the fact they were in a window box and stuff like that, I was like, whoa, this is so.
But yeah, what I liked was the parallel as well, though. The fact that they were the two that kind of made David whole again. They're the two that helped David find his equilibrium and all of this lot. And then the parallel, they're doing it again. Now that David is the antagonist, they're doing it with Sid and giving her that same motivation and making her realise just how powerful she is in order to help her stop what David's trying to do and to stop the world from being destroyed. So, yeah.
It's so good. I loved it.
Very, very good.
Yeah.
But that's not all. We then also have another episode of Legion to talk about. So let's move on then to the 7th episode, which is called Chapter 26. Yes, evidently on Legion.
Yeah, so the Sid and the Careys have gone through the time door to find David, and they arrived at David's house. Well, they didn't know whose house it was. They arrived at a house, didn't they?
Yeah.
And they could hear a baby crying.
Mm-hmm.
So she told them to wait, and she went in the house and went upstairs and started chatting to this woman who had a baby.
Well, before that happened, there was a door. When they arrived outside David's childhood home, there was like a door out in the garden.
You know, your front door's outside.
And the woman was like, you can see it as well? And they're like, yeah. And she's like, so I'm not going crazy. And they're like, no. And then she was like, oh. And then the baby cried, and she sort of just turned and rushed back into the house. So Sid told them to wait, and she followed the woman in.
So she started talking to the mum, didn't she? Mm-hmm. And the mum was wasn't she on about the Holocaust and stuff, wasn't she?
Yeah, and about the horrors that she's seen and all of this kind of stuff.
And I think Sid thought she was in the wrong place because she said, oh, well, I shouldn't be here or something. And she started moving away, and then she said, she called the baby David, and then she realised, I am in the right place.
Yeah.
the baby's called David. It's like, oh.
Mm-hmm.
So downstairs, the man Carrie is really unwell.
Yeah.
He's like getting really ill because he took all the brunt of what the other Carrie had been beaten up by.
Mm-hmm.
And Sid tells them about the baby.
Yeah.
The baby's David, and she thinks they can save it. They don't. We're not going to kill him. It's David. We've got to say it's a baby. You know, he doesn't. It hasn't happened yet. And the other one, she was quite annoyed about it, wasn't she? Carrie, the other Carrie, she was going, but he'll grow up to be this monster. And she goes, but we might better do something about it now.
Yeah, he might.
We're
That
here
might
now.
not happen now because we're here. So we've kind of changed things just by being here. So we could alter the course of history without having to kill him. It was quite interesting because they didn't make the obvious parallel, but I think what they were getting at there was, you know, there's that sort of philosophical conversation when it comes to time travel of like, if you were able to go back in time and kill baby Hitler and prevent World War II from happening, would you do it? And on one hand, you go, well, it's a no-brainer. Yeah, if you kill him, then, you know, the Second World War and the Holocaust and everything doesn't happen. But at the same time, at that period of time, he's an innocent baby. He's not that monster that did those things. He's a child. And, you know, there's all those what ifs of like, well, okay, you go back and kill him, but then what if that creates like an opening for somebody even worse than him to take power? Or like she's saying, you know, us being in the past, we could potentially alter the course of history without having to kill him. We could change things so that he doesn't become the man that he is in the future.
Yeah. Well, while they were talking, the time was stuttering, wasn't it? And they were sort of repeating themselves. Yeah,
and it was really subtle, wasn't it? It wasn't like big scenes. It was just kind of almost like little glitches. And I remember when I was watching it, I thought maybe it was something to do with the actual like stream I was watching at the time. And I was like, oh, is it like juddering a little bit? But then it happened a few times and I went, no, wait, this is meant to be happening, where it's kind of slightly just going back. It was only like a word or maybe like part of a sentence that it was like recapping again, wasn't it? So it was done quite subtly, but that's when they obviously realised that the time is becoming unstable again, and they obviously had an encounter with the time demon, time eater things prior to coming to the past when they left their time. So they're aware that something is happening.
Because they had that moment when she was outside with her mum and she was chopping wood, and she was chatting to the mum about all sorts, wasn't she?
Mm-hmm.
She'd done all the wood, and then she looked and realised some of the top wood had disappeared.
Yeah.
And then she realised they're back, they're there.
And then it just sort of started happening, where they just sort of came en masse and started attacking the house, didn't they?
Well, the house started going back to like the basic, you know, like what would you call it? The skeleton of the house.
Because they were stripping out all the walls and the floor and the furniture and everything.
And it showed the baby looking at his mobile, and then the mobile disappeared, and then its toys started disappearing.
Mm-hmm.
And just as it was going to get him, Sid hit it or did something to it, didn't she? And then
because it
lost
was
the baby then.
Creepily leaning into the cot, wasn't it? And just as it got close, then all of a sudden, because you never saw her in the room, you just saw it go, and it puffed out, and then she was stood there. And then the mum came rushing in, and she said, "He's not safe here. We need to get out of here," kind of thing.
Yeah, I was so scared. I'm like, safe baby. So anyway, also after the other thing that happened in that episode, we met David's dad again.
Yes.
And we saw the bit where he was leaving David and his wife, and then I started thinking, did he actually physically leave? Because he kept showing him with his thing on his head. Yeah. And kept seeing things. I was thinking, did he actually go away, or was he still sat there? I thought unsure really whether he's actually left wherever he was. And it showed him he was in a theatre, watching a matador and a bull, which was probably people in the bull costume. Yeah. And the matador started stabbing it, didn't he? Yeah. And then the next thing, the shadow monster was sitting next to him, saying, "You shouldn't have come."
And then he was on a plane.
Then he was he was on a plane going to Morocco. Yeah. And then he was on the plane. Next minute, he's off the plane. Yeah. And then people just get in their lifts, and he's looking around. What do I do? Then there's a man by a car holding a painting of him. Yeah. And he'd come to collect him.
And he was
And it's
like, "Oh,
good.
I'm so honored to meet you. I'm so happy." And he's like, "You knew I was coming?" And he's like, "Of course, of course. My king sent me. He sent me
Yeah,
to receive you. You're a very honored guest." And he's like, "He knew I was coming." And he's like, "Of course, he knows everything. He's a wonderful man,"
yeah.
and all this that. And he's like, "Come, come, I will take you to him." And then he
He's
sort
sort of
of,
looking up, what's going on here? So gets in the car
mm,
with him. And then meanwhile, we saw David and Switch in the time tunnel, traveling through time.
yeah.
And it was kept getting unstable, didn't it? Like it was weeks, months, days, what it was. I don't know what was going on in there.
And it was going the displays we have in the time tunnel where it says how many hours or how many weeks or whatever. They were all like glitching in and out and changing to different times or different
Yeah.
hours or whatever. And she said it's
She
because
was getting really ill, and they said the time was becoming unstable.
yeah,
And then all of a sudden, he I don't know, he leant or something, and then next thing he went somewhere. Like he went in through a door.
yeah,
He was on his own, and then he was in a field.
yeah.
And then Farouk was there at that little kiosk thing it used in, I think it was Series 1, telling him he decides what's real and what is not.
But that was the bit we saw that. That was a scene
Back in
from
ages ago.
like the first season or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Because obviously he looked different, his hair was different and things like that. And I thought, wait, they haven't refilmed this. They've just put in footage from the previous season. And yeah, it was that whole thing about like the power and about how you have control over it. And then that almost seemed to make him realize, yes, I do. So he was able to exert his control over the time tunnel and over the, like moving through time thing.
Yeah. But then we also soon saw the real Farouk still entrapped in the between time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like really weird, like last time, all black and white, and anything was said was in like sort of subtitle-y, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It's like, oh. But then Charles arrived at the palace with this strange little man.
Mm-hmm.
And he walked in, there was loads of kids running around.
Yep.
And a monkey in a cage.
Yeah.
And then Farouk arrived. And we saw there was a painting on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, hang on, that looks familiar. And the painting on the wall was the same place as the real Farouk was in.
Yeah, because it was like
the
black
palace,
and
like
it was like kind
black
of
and white,
black and white trees, a road.
trees, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's like, that's really odd. So King Farouk, as he's known, said that all the kids were mute and he had saved them all.
Yeah.
Because he said, how come you have all these children? He said, well, they were poor, they had nobody, and they were orphans. So he said, I make it out, he's such a wonderful person.
And didn't Charles say something like that's really benevolent of you or something? And he was like, no, not at all. It's decency. And he said it's about being decent and doing the right thing. When you are in a position to do these things, one must simply do these things. And he was very, I mean, the thing is, he was very eloquent. He was very regal. He was also very like, oh, I'm so humble, and look at, my home is your home, and I will take care of you. You're an honored guest, and all of this stuff. Like the way that he was putting on this persona of being so nice and so inviting and welcoming and stuff like that. I was like,
Because he was saying to him, he said, we were meant to meet each other, and it's all like meant to be, basically.
Yeah.
And then he took him to the astral plane, didn't he? And said that this place is a place where you can imagine anything. And he saw the wife, didn't he, and the baby, and he was smiling, and he looked like she was going to hand him the baby, and then she disappeared again. Mm-hmm. And the next thing, they were back at the table again.
Yeah.
And then they went into he said about entertainment. Did he say about the entertainment? Did he?
Yeah,
said, come on, we have entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
So they ended up in the theatre again.
Yeah.
There's some weird, scary opera story narrated by Farouk.
He said it was the children's favourite story.
Yeah.
And it was basically
about the devil or something.
Yeah, it was how this place was once ruled by an evil king, and he subjugated his subjects, and he was really cruel. And then one day a hero came, and the hero stood up to the king, and the king, like this, because it was all done in it was like shadow theatre, wasn't it? It was all,
yeah.
Outlines and stuff, which again is interesting because he's the Shadow King.
Yeah.
The king was almost like a minotaur, wasn't he? He was like a large man with like horns on his head, and then the hero was like a knight with a sword and everything. And it was how this knight came and he slayed the evil king, and he freed the people from tyranny, and then they all loved and worshipped him. And it was basically, that was his story. He was telling Charles, this is what I did. I came here and I freed these people, and
Yeah.
I got rid of their evil king.
While he was watching it, David sort of appeared, didn't he, slightly, and went, "Lies, behold the king of lies."
Yeah.
Next to the dad.
Mm-hmm.
And the next thing he woke up, he was
Yeah.
in bed.
Mm-hmm. And the
So
painting was there staring at him.
The painting was staring at him, and then he went downstairs, and the monkey was going mad in the cage, wasn't it?
Yeah, because there'd been a little bit earlier on with the monkey where
The kids have been taunting the monkey, haven't they?
yeah, and he said, "Oh, it's a poor simple creature. They don't know how to leave it alone." And he said, "You're best to stay away from that thing," and stuff like that.
So when he went towards the monkey, he did the thing with his where he tries to get into its mind.
Yeah.
And it was a bloke in a cage going, "I am the real king. He has put me in here."
Yeah, he's trapped me. You have to help me.
It's like, whoa, really weird. Then he met David.
Right, yes, David appeared to him.
Yeah. I mean, it was with David because of the worry that Farouk would find out. They disappeared into the astral plane, didn't they?
Yeah, because he said it's not safe to talk here.
So he basically got the dad to go into his mind, wasn't it? That's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
So they were in the astral plane, and he told him to eat this cake of knowledge.
Yeah, eat this cake; it will explain everything to you.
And he basically saw everything that happened.
Yeah.
From day one right up to the current time.
Mm-hmm.
So now he understands what's going on, and he warned him about Farouk, didn't he? And told him what he needed to do, what the dad needed to do, basically.
And Charles was like, "But if this happened, if this, what you're showing me has already happened, then what possible hope do I have of making it not happen?" And he said, "Because you have me now."
Yeah.
It's like it's going to be different this time because you have me to help you.
Yeah. So I think we went down to breakfast, didn't he?
Yeah.
Came down to breakfast, and then David came in with him, dressed in like an army thing, and said, "Did he say he was his cousin or something?"
There was a big long table in a very oddly lit room, and Farouk was at the very end. And like you said, it was a very fancy buffet banquet breakfast. And Charles comes in, and he stands in the doorway, and Farouk is like, "Oh, my friend, how did you sleep?" And he's like, "Come eat, sit down." And he's like, "Oh, thank you." And he said, "But before I do, I'd like to introduce you to a friend of mine." And Farouk's like, "What?" And then he's like, "Yes, yeah, he was stationed here previously, and he's been out here ever since." And then he said, "Please come in." And he introduced David to Farouk, and Farouk was like trying to probe his mind, but David was kind of blocking him. So he was like going, and he was like, "Oh, it's a pleasure to meet you. Please come join us." And he was trying to be very.
He knew who really was, wasn't it?
Well, I don't know. Obviously, David knew who he was, but I don't know if the Shadow King was aware, because the Shadow King's thinking, "Why can't I read this guy? Why can't I figure out who he is or where he's from or what he's doing here?" Because he kept doing this, and you kept through the scene, it was like he was getting sweatier and sweatier because he was exerting his psychic power to try and get into David's mind. But what did he?
That's probably what it was, wasn't it?
Hearing music and stuff like this. And then when he did get glimpses, it was like the hippies.
The music from the where his place is with all the girls. That's what he was seeing some of it, but not enough to get. That's all he was letting him see.
Mm.
And then he said, "Oh, I need to go and get myself tidied up or cleaned up or something." So he left the table.
Yeah.
And then Switch was there, and she collapsed, didn't she?
Yep.
And then he grabbed her, and then all of a sudden they jumped again.
Mm-hmm.
And they were in his bedroom, wasn't they? Was it his bedroom with a little girl? With a girl?
Mm-hmm.
And it sort of thought, well, I need to try and explain. He's trying to explain it. So he said, we've got to go back to the astral plane.
Yeah.
Took his dad there again. And then he was trying to talk to him, and all you could hear is the doors knocking, and David kept saying, "Stop it, not now, not now." And he was trying to talk to the dad about everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden he just froze, didn't he? And he said, David. And then, then the doors started opening, didn't they?
Yeah.
And they, "Daddy."
Hey, Dad.
Well, first two came through first, wasn't it?
Mm.
Two came through and started saying about, he's no good. He's no good to us. He's no good to us. We need to, we'll help you. We'll help you, or something like that, wasn't it? And then all of a sudden, all the doors started opening. All these different daddy, hey, daddy.
Yeah, and some of them were like, "You left us. You abandoned us," and others had like more serious voices, and others were really like childlike and happy to see him. And he's like, "I don't understand what's going on," sort of thing. And they were closing in on him, weren't they? And then he put his hand to his head and used his power, and there was like a flash of white light, and then he was like out of there.
Yeah. And he could see Farouk in the room, and he was like meditating, wasn't he? Could see him just like meditating.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, the Legion were trying to wake David.
Yeah.
Trying to get him to wake up because they need him.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when he saw the little girl, the one that could talk.
Yeah, because he was surprised because she spoke to him and he said, "Wait, you can speak?" And she said, "Yes, but what did she say? Like she doesn't because of him or something? Like she chooses not to speak around."
She said the noise is, I can't stand the noise or something.
So again, he then linked with her mind, and it was full of people.
All the prisoners, all the people from the land, the king's land.
So this is then when you put it together and you go, okay, hold on a second. This little play he showed him earlier on was a perversion of the truth in that the king was obviously the good person and Farouk was the demon. And instead of it being the king that destroyed the demon and he freed everybody, instead the demon destroyed the king and took over his kingdom and trapped all of his subjects.
So Charles realised that David was true, right, about Farouk.
Mm-hmm.
But then meanwhile, something weird was happening with the picture in the hallway.
Yes.
As we could see the Farouk. We start seeing the old Farouk in the picture, and then next thing he's out.
And I mean, this is the sort of connection with the Sid storyline, is that there were little glitches started happening in this place, and you could feel like Switch obviously knew that something was happening, that, you know, again, time was collapsing, because she'd lost some more teeth and stuff as well, hadn't she?
Yeah, she was really weak now. She was
And
calling to her own dad, wasn't she?
Yeah.
At one point.
And yeah, because wasn't she speaking in Japanese or something at one point as well? And then you could see like, oh no, now this timeline is getting affected by the time demons. And you'd got this weird bit as well in the time between times where it was showing Farouk and it was like how he could basically find a way out. And there was like all this stuff. There was like a nest with eggs in, and the eggs were cracking and all of this kind of stuff. That was weird. I was like, that was strange. And then he was getting, like you said, the picture in the hallway. You could see him coming up the road, sort of jumping forward, getting closer and closer and closer until he got right up close to the inside of the painting. And then he was out of the painting. And he walked into the room.
He walked into Farouk, the other Farouk who was meditating.
Yeah.
And he said, what did he say? Something like, that interesting.
Yeah, and they both sort of smiled at each other and stuff. And it was like, oh no, this isn't good.
I know.
Because obviously
basically he's got someone on his side now, hasn't he? So there's two of them against David and his dad.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like even up the playing field, hasn't it? So it's like, oh my days, what's going to happen next week?
Yeah, and obviously next week is the final episode.
I know.
So yeah, how this is all going to go down, how this is all going to get resolved, it's like, I have no idea. But yeah, it was very good.
Yes, indeed.
I'm very excited to see how I hope that it all ends like in a way that is satisfactory, you know?
Oh yeah, because it was only ever meant to be 3 seasons, so hopefully the guys got it all sewn up quite well.
Yeah.
So yes.
So yeah, so there we go. So that was the penultimate episode of Legion. So we will have the finale of that next week to chat about. Now, we shift our focus in keeping with, you know, this has been a very comic book inspired podcast this week because all 3 shows have been based off comics or the world of comics. And we move into our final bit of chat, and it's the return of Preacher. So this was season 4 of Preacher, kicked off with a double episode. And yeah, I was so happy to see this program back. So just a little bit of a background in case there are those of you that don't know what Preacher is. So I will try and summarize it as best as I possibly can. Okay, so Dominic Cooper plays a preacher in a small town place in like Texas or something like that. It's just like in the middle of nowhere. There is a being called Genesis. Genesis is like a child of God. He's like, you know, the combination of a demon and an angel. And as a result, he is like the most powerful force in creation. He's actually probably more powerful than God itself. He somehow sort of gets cast out or escapes from heaven and goes to Earth trying to find a host. Goes into various people, eventually ends up in our main character, Jesse, the preacher, who is then able to wield this power and have like the voice of God, where he can make people do what he tells them to do and have control over various things. Jesse then realizes that obviously God himself has gone missing and has fled the throne of heaven, and so he has then got to go on a quest with his on-again, off-again girlfriend, Tulip O'Hare, who's a wisecracking, badass, sort of bounty hunter, thief type, grifter character, and Cassidy, who's a vampire, and a drug-addicted, alcoholic Irish vampire who provides a lot of the comedy in this show. And the three of them set off to try and find God. And along the way, they encounter all sorts of weird and wonderful characters, including Eugene, who is one of the residents of the town that Jesse starts out in. And poor Eugene, is called Arseface because he tried to kill himself and it went wrong, and he was left with a puckered mouth that looks like a bumhole. You have him, and at a certain point, unfortunately for poor Eugene, he gets sent to hell. While he's in hell, he meets Hitler, and Hitler is, by all intents and purposes, reformed and wants to be a good person now and atone for his sins. There's a whole sub-story with them and the devil and stuff, and they manage to escape hell and go on the run. There is also an agent of both heaven and hell called the Saint of Killers, he was a cowboy who then gets brought back after he died as like almost like the angel of death, and he gets sent out firstly to track down Jesse and get the power of Genesis back, but then later on it's to track down the escapees from hell. He's just this relentless force that comes through the whole show. They do eventually end up back in hell. Long and the short of it is, Saint of Killers kills both the existing angel of death and the devil. The devil is then gone. As a result, there's a power vacuum, which means that Hitler is able to take over, and Hitler now runs hell. There are also angels along the way. We got to meet Jesse's dysfunctional family who are into witchcraft and stuff that live in the swamplands. And there's also the Grail. And the Grail are basically the power behind the Roman Catholic Church. So, for all intents and purposes, we all know, the Roman Catholic Church and the Vatican are in charge of Catholicism. In the world of Preacher, there is another organization behind them called the Grail. The Grail's job is to protect the last scion of Jesus and prepare for the apocalypse and the dawning of a new world. Now, unfortunately, the last scion of Jesus is an inbred idiot called Humpadoo. And yeah, he's kind of mentally challenged and stuff. And he's supposed to be the Messiah, but then Hashtar, who is an ex-Nazi torturer who then becomes a part of this religious organization and their leader, decides that he wants Jesse to become the new Messiah instead, because he would make a far better reigning monarch of the world. And that's how they get intertwined. And now the Grail are relentlessly pursuing Jesse. Jesse wants nothing to do with them. I mean, it came to the point where he actually carved, as they like to say on the show, a vagina in Hashtar's head. He has a big gaping hole in his head now and is not allowed to wear hats because Jesse commanded it so. They hold themselves up in a big fortress in the Middle East in a place called Masada, where they've captured Cassidy the vampire, and they also have an angel strung up there as well. I think that's kind of covered the basics. Go and watch the last 2 seasons if you want to know more. But now I'll hand over to you, Mum, to do the previously on leading into this episode.
Yeah. So obviously, like you said, previously on, Eugene got out of hell. Jesse took care of his weird family. I think he killed them all, didn't he, in the end?
Yeah.
And Cassidy got incarcerated by her star somewhere in Masada. Now, it was really strange because it began with Tulip and Cassidy chatting, having a beer in like a hotel room.
Yeah.
Now, this is really strange. So it's like, this is obviously this is obviously the end rather than the beginning. That's how I look at it. Having a joke about the 2 Irishmen that are stranded at sea.
Oh, that made me laugh.
Find a genie in the bottle.
Yeah, go on,
find a genie in the bottle.
Mm-hmm.
And they said they had one wish from the genie, and one of them wished for the sea to be turned to Guinness.
Yep.
And the other one got annoyed because he said, now with the sea is Guinness, we'll have to pee in the boat.
That made me laugh so much.
And it's hilarious. So then they were getting a bit amorous because there's been an on-off sort of thing with them, really, isn't there? Mm-hmm. We saw that, and then the next thing you see somebody falling from a great height, landing in Australia.
Yeah, and it was Jesse.
Yep. And then it goes a few months later.
No,
have Jesse.
Is it a few months earlier? sure it was before. So
It must have been earlier. It must have been earlier, yeah.
we're now getting how they
so
all
a
ended
few
up in
months
these
earlier,
places.
we had them driving in the Middle East.
Mm-hmm.
The car was careering all over the road because basically they were having nookie while they were driving.
Yeah.
And we finally see Cassidy is in a prison
Mm-hmm.
with a weird bird-man.
Yeah.
Or an angel
There's
man,
an
or what
angel.
he called him, a bird-man, didn't he?
Yeah.
And Star's right-hand woman had come to take him for torturing. And the torturing chamber was basically based like a lecture room, wasn't it?
Oh man, it was so funny.
It was like he's giving a lecture on the art of torturing, basically.
Yeah, and as they were going along, there were lockers, there were people dressed almost like in school uniforms, and there were all these different things, and it was like intermediate torturing, and then they went a bit further, and there was like, I think it was advanced torturing, or like next level torturing or something. And then the final one said, what did it say? It said something like, I can't remember what it was to do with now, whether it was maths, like advanced calculus or something, and then then they changed the slate, and it was like, like extreme torturing or something with Professor.
That's right. It was a real classroom. They changed the sign to say extreme torturing or
Yeah.
something with the professor, whatever he was.
Frankie Toscani.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah, he looked like mafia type bloke, didn't he?
Mm-hmm. Because if you remember, at the end of last season, he actually was summoned because when they set up in Masada, he talked to the girl, the right-hand woman, and he said, we need our best torturer, and he said, send for Frankie. And so obviously they sent for Frankie, and now Frankie is there. And Frankie, like you said, is like a kind of mafia type character.
Oh, yeah, of course, I remember that. Yes, get Frankie. Yeah, that's true. So basically, he was going to torture him in all sorts of ways, and the Irishman, Cassidy, was going, you can't do anything to me that hasn't already been done. Nothing hurts me. I heal, all this stuff. And he goes, I don't think you'll heal from this as easy as you did the other things. And then, basically, they decided to castrate him.
Yeah,
not castrate him,
circumcise him. Because, this bit, because he'd been doing this whole chat to the class about guns and about specific guns and how they're good for torture. But then with a subject like this, who can heal, you need to go, you need to get a bit more creative. And then he walks towards him, and Cassidy's sort of like, oh, what are you going to do to me, and all this stuff. And the guy puts on a little kind of, what are they? I can't remember what they're called now, but the little Jewish skull cap thing.
Yeah.
And he sort of like, you hear this sort of Jewish kind of chanting in the background, and he sort of puts his arms out and pulls out a razor. And then
Cassidy goes, no, you're not gonna do that.
And there was like, oh my God, he's gonna. And because they prefaced it with, he carries on healing. You're like, oh, this is going to be horrible because he's going to keep circumcising him over and over again. And that's exactly what happened. Oh, it was disgusting. Yeah, that was really, really horrible.
Poor old Cassidy. He's been through the wars.
Mm-hmm.
So meanwhile, we had Jesse and Tulip were in a bar, and some of Star's soldiers were in there drinking, and they started arguing, didn't they, and fighting each other.
And then one stood up and started singing.
Yeah.
And then they all started singing, and I was like, what's going on? Like, what's happening here? But then we got to see that Jesse and Tulip were at the back of the bar, and they're talking about...
Jesse used his Genesis, didn't he? And he told them they had to follow Tulip's orders.
Yeah, she's your leader now. And they're like, she is our leader now. You'll do what she says. We will do what she says. And it's like, how do you feel about this? And she's like, what? Having a right-wing fascist army following my every command? Yeah, I think I'm okay with it.
Well, it's a woman, wasn't it? She was going, I'll do anything. Come along.
But yeah, then you had this woman who then became like, almost was like being her second, was following around, twittering away, like going, oh, this is going to be fabulous. We're going to do exactly we've got a plan and all this kind of stuff. And you're like, okay, fair enough. And Tulip was a bit like, oh, this woman's really getting on my nerves.
She had obviously this is part of the plan, so she was going to work with these guys. Mm-hmm. So then we had a brief encounter with the Saint of Sinners. Is it Saint of Sinners?
Saint of Killers.
Saint of Killers.
With Eugene.
Well, Saint of Death and Eugene, and they had arrived at Jesse's old house, didn't they? The parents' house.
It was the grandmother and stuff, wasn't it?
House, yeah. Looking for Jesse, and obviously they realised, look at the state of it. Well, they're definitely not here. So that was we saw them briefly.
Yeah.
So then Jesse heads off to the big rock place in Masada, And then this weird metal detector thing out the entrance.
I thought that was so funny. I mean, this is
It was
again
hilarious.
these kind of things that show how much humor there is in this show. So you've got this heavily fortified fortress built into a giant like mountain. There's machine gun turrets and there's people with like guns everywhere. And outside the front door, they've got like an airport metal detector with the little tray thing that you have to put your belongings in and stuff like that. And oh, it was so funny. And he
I
walks
thought,
just walks up, doesn't he, really casually, and then it turns out it's his lighter, so he puts that in the box and then walks through, and then his star's like, let him in. And you're like, okay, this is weird.
yeah, that was funny. So he
Mm.
went into the room, and then he said he'd taken precautions
Yeah.
this time, and they all were wearing special earphones so they couldn't hear. No one could be influenced by his Genesis voice.
And then he said, I see
And
you've
he
got
goes,
yourself
"And
an
we
old
have an
lady.
old, and we have an old lady." And he goes, "Oh, who is deaf?" Because she then sent a message via sign language to Star saying,
Yeah.
"Who is deaf?"
And
So she was she was interpreting everything through sign language.
Mm-hmm.
And Jesse said, "Oh, I've decided I was a bit harsh. I brought you something."
Yeah, and he's got a baseball cap.
A red baseball hat. Who says, "So you can wear a hat?" And he says, "I heard something about he's going to carve this doody lady thing into his head."
Mm-hmm.
He's really annoyed with him. And it was hilarious because obviously they couldn't hear him.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point he did something because as he walked out of the room, they were all shooting each other.
He left the room, didn't he? And he managed to, like, there was a guard outside the door.
No, that was afterwards. As he walked out, they were shooting each other, and the soldier outside, took his headphone off for a minute and goes, "Where is Cass?"
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So how did he? I'm trying to remember now how he got them
We didn't know
all.
what happened. We didn't see.
But he did something that meant that the voice got through, and then the next thing they were all killing each other.
Yeah, I don't know what he did. I didn't see what he did. I thought we saw him in the room. The thing about him saying that to him, and the next thing we see him walking out, and they were all shouting, shooting each other, and then he got the soldier to tell him where Cass was.
Yeah.
Cass. So anyway, meanwhile, Tulip's using her soldiers to get her in.
Mm-hmm.
She was pretending she was a prisoner, wasn't she?
Yeah.
And then she said to the woman soldier, she goes, "You need to get this door open and keep it."
Oh my God.
Keep the door open.
Yeah.
So she goes, "Okay, that's what we'll do." And then, meanwhile, Jess had found Cassidy, and then they had a massive fight, didn't they?
And that was brilliant. The choreography.
They had to fight a load of guys first, didn't they, in the torture chamber to free him?
Yeah, because there was no one in there to begin with.
Was he?
There was no one in there to start with. It was just Cassidy. And so we went up and spoke to him, and it was like that thing where, because they've sort of fallen out and been friends and fallen out and been friends, it was a begrudging, like, oh, okay, thanks for coming, sort of thing. And then all the guys came in, the Frankie guy and all these, like, frat boy students. And then Jesse kicked the trolley of weapons over to them, and he's like, "Bring it on!" And then you had this really cool fight sequence, and the whole time it kept cutting to Cassidy's face, and he was looking. There were moments where he looked like he was really touched, like, "Oh, he's come to save me," and then other moments where he was like, "Look at him showing off. Look at him, like, thinking he's the hero again," and all this stuff. Yeah, he took them all out, and then he was able to free Cassidy, and then he said, "Do you not want to do your vampire thing?" And he's like, No, I'm not going to do my vampire thing, not at all. And he's like, all right, fine, whatever. Come on, let's get out of here. Tulip's dealing with the door so we can leave. So then they head out through the tunnels to try and exit the building.
Well, they were arguing as well, weren't they, about Tulip?
Yeah, when they got to the lift.
When they got to the lift, they...
It's
like, you're trying to get out, and then all he wanted to do is talk about Tulip, saying she's my girl and all this stuff, and then they started having a fight, didn't they?
Yeah, they got into a fight, yeah.
And so they got their way nearly to the door, and one of the soldiers, the woman that she said, "Don't let the door shut," sacrificed herself to try to keep the door open.
Because she's an idiot.
She's got squished in between.
But because she's an idiot. Like, you forgot to say that bit. The reason it all went wrong was because when she was arguing with her superior about filing a report, he said, "Soldier, you report to me." And she went, "No, I don't. I work for her." And then you're like, oh no. So then all the people started shooting and killing all the soldiers with Tulip. And then the guy shut the door, and the girl soldier managed to kill that guy. But then she couldn't shut the door, and she was like, "Don't worry, ma'am, I've got this." And she was like stood in between the doors trying to hold them open. But obviously these are big, heavy stone
Stone
and metal
doors.
doors that no human being could possibly hold open. So yeah, as a result, she got squished in between them, which
But she
was
was still
just,
alive, wasn't she?
oh,
So
that was
somehow.
gross.
And she goes, but I told her to keep the door open. She goes, well, the switch, is there no switch to the door? And she goes, yeah, the switch to the door is on top of the top up there.
Because we saw this weird bit earlier on where there'd been a flag waving thing, and I was like,
Wave
what's
to
that
flag,
all
yeah.
about? And it's because the flag waving is a symbol, so that right up on the top of the mountain, they've got the lever that opens the door. So then Tulip's like,
She had to
right,
climb,
okay, so she
climb
had to
up.
climb up, yeah.
And she got all the way up to the top and she found that woman. What was it she called?
I can't remember what her name is.
I can't remember what she's called. So then they had a fight, didn't they?
Yeah, that was a really cool fight sequence they
That was
had.
a really good fight, yeah.
And Tulip went over the edge, but luckily a deck chair had gone over beforehand, which she was able to grab hold of and then climb back up again. And then she dispatched the woman and threw her off, and it turned out she had a squirrel suit on.
Yeah, she flew away.
So she was able to glide to safety.
So she got the door open.
Yeah.
And then Cassidy refused to leave.
Oh, that bit though. Well, it made sense though, didn't it? Because when the doors opened, it dawned on us when me and Zoe were watching it, and we went, "He can't go because it's sunny."
But he said that to him. He said, "Is it because it's
sunlight? He's a vampire," and he's like,
and he just turned around and said, "No, I've got a plan on my own."
Yeah, because
so
he didn't.
Is it just?
It's because he didn't want to be beholden to Jessie. That's what it was. I think it was a combination of fear of the sunlight, not wanting to show that fear, and also not wanting to be beholden to Jessie. And it's like, no, I got this.
Yeah.
And then you had, it was quite sad because the doors closed and you had Jessie on one side of the door in the light and Cassidy on the other side in the dark, and they were both with their heads up against the door. Like,
yeah.
And I was just like, oh, that's quite, it was quite sort of symbolic image and also quite sad. And then it was like, all of that was for nothing. So Jessie left there, and then Cassidy went back downstairs.
Back to the bar, didn't they? Well, they went back to the bar, didn't they?
Uh-huh.
And then when they went to sleep, he had a dream. And he had a couple of dreams. Didn't he? One was an explosion.
Yeah.
And the other one at Masada, that place, the stone building.
Yeah.
And then the phone was ringing. And he answered it. It was his dad.
Yeah.
Saying, time to get to work, time to find God, but you better hurry, as big things are coming for you.
Yeah.
The second dream was he was fighting off Star,
yep.
and he was strangling him. And then he realised he was strangling Tulip, wasn't it?
Yep, again, that dawned on me. I was like, wait, I think that's Tulip that he's strangling, and obviously it was. And then that was another dream.
Then you had no more dreaming, this is your wake-up call.
Yep.
So then he got up, he wrote a letter to Tulip and left.
Mm-hmm.
And then she woke up, read it, and went to the wardrobe to find there was a costume to get in to Star's place. We're gonna
earlier on in the episode, she had mentioned about her Grail her Grail outfit from Japan, and he said no, you don't need to do that. But now that he's left her, she's got this outfit out of the back of the wardrobe with the wig and everything.
Probably the letter was the plan, whatever he was decided to do, but some of it had to do on his own, so he left her instructions, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So then we saw him thumbing a lift along the road.
Yeah.
And, we saw him thumbing a lift. That's all we saw of him.
Mm-hmm.
But then back at Star, he had a visitor.
Because you'd had this weird bit earlier on where there was wind blowing through the room, and Star sort of looked over as if and it was like, what was that? What was that just happened there?
And he went over and poured a drink, didn't he?
And yeah, he went over to it, and there was a mini fridge, and he got a Diet Dr. Pepper out and put it in this little glass with one ice cube, and then he walked over, and it got shown, and there was a man with a big beard and white hair, and he said, "Oh, this is probably one of my proudest creations." And it's like, wait, that's God.
That's God again. Remember, we'd seen him before, so we knew who he was.
Why is God there with her Star?
And he said he wants Jessie to suffer. Like, whoa, that was the end of episode 1.
And it was just like, oh my God, this is what the hell? And obviously the other thing was Cassidy obviously got put back in his cell and everything, didn't he? And the angel made some comment about him coming back or something like that. And it was like, so Cassidy's back in the cell, Jesse's gone off on his own, Tulip's getting ready to storm the castle, and her Star is working with God now. So it was like, okay.
Moving on to episode 2.
which was called The Last
God.
Supper.
Yeah, so we see God
Yep.
and the dinosaurs.
This bit was
And
brilliant.
This is hilarious.
Let me talk about this bit. I want to talk about this bit.
You could do this bit.
You get this bit, and it was almost done in the style of like any of you that know this reference. So it was like a Ray Harryhausen movie. So it was animation, like almost like stop motion stuff, and it was like set in the prehistoric time. So Earth was all prehistoric, and there were dinosaurs, and they were almost like made out of like they were animated, made out of clay and stuff like that. And there was like really dopey dinosaurs. And there was God was there having his coffee, looking out over the sights and being very, very proud by what he saw and watching the dinosaurs. And then it was like a brachiosaurus or something, goes along, really dopey looking, and it's wandering along, and then it does a big poo, and then it turns around and starts sniffing the poo, and God's going, no, don't, I command you. And then it ate its own poo. And it was gross, and it was like, oh my God, this is weird. And then God got really angry and was like, that's it. This didn't work. You had your chance. I'm sick and tired of this. I've tried so many times to stop you from eating your own shit. That's it. And so then he rained fire down, and basically that was how the dinosaurs got wiped out.
Dinosaurs, yeah.
Basically, God summoned like the asteroid to wipe out all the dinosaurs because they couldn't help themselves but to eat their own poo. So that was the end of that.
That was hysterical. It really was good.
Oh man.
So then Jessie got picked up on the road by a woman who had a pickup truck that had a load of chickens in it.
Did you not find it weird that she was American as well? Because you're like, wait, they're in like the Middle East. Why is this woman driving in like a farm truck? And she's
she said she was an ex-porn star, didn't she? That was her job.
Yeah.
I'm an ex-porn star. Now I'm delivering chickens.
We got the kind of tail end of a story. Like, we never got the full story, but there was a whole bit of, like... And then I think it was the KY jelly, because the thing flew off and, like, killed one of my co-stars, and that was when I quit the porn industry. And you're like, okay, I'm kind of glad we didn't get to hear all of that story.
Well, basically, he was looking for this weird rock-looking rock, wasn't he, or something?
Yeah, he had a scribbly picture, didn't he?
Yeah, and along the way, they saw a kid with a dog on the road.
Yeah.
And he told her to stop.
And first she didn't, and then he used the voice, didn't he?
Had to use the voice, yeah. So he got out the car, and she then drove off, didn't she?
Before she did, he looked at the door, and on the door it said, Jesus de Sade, House of Entertainment.
That's it.
And then it drove off.
Yeah. So they went to help the little boy, and he said that his dog was sick or something, didn't he?
Mister, my dog.
Yeah. And then he pulled a gun on Jessie.
Yeah.
And took Jessie's money and his boots.
Well, no. Again, you can't do it injustice. So basically, the kid held Jessie at gunpoint. Jessie was like, "What? Are you kidding me?" And then he used the voice for the kids to like not, because then it turned out it was a scam, and the dog got up, and the dog wasn't dead. Yeah, Jessie used the voice. The kid dropped the gun. The gun went off. The gun shot the dog through the head. The dog fell down, and then the kid went back onto the ground again. Went, Mister, my dog, and it's like, this is just what happened, but now it's real. So then Jessie felt really bad, and Jessie took out his wallet, gave all his money to the kid, and then he was like, "There you go," and the kid was like, "No, that's not enough." And he's like, "What more do you want? Those shoes? You're not having my shoes." And then the next thing, he's walking along the road, just his socks on. And you're like, that whole thing was pointless because he ended up giving the kid what the kid wanted in the first place, and the poor dog died for nothing.
Yeah. Oh, that was so funny.
Oh, man.
And then he spotted in the horizon a person on a camel. Mm-hmm. So he thought, oh, maybe that's my ticket out of here. So back at Stars, he has another plan for Jessie, but needs Frankie for some surgical assistance. So Frankie is the torturer.
No. Yes. Rewind a second. The thing we missed, actually, was we got the aftermath of the gunfight in that room, and her star had managed to hide himself under the bodies. Now, unfortunately, when he pulled himself out, one of the bodies must have had a twitch, and a bullet went off and went through his headphone and blew his ear off. So he's now got one less ear. So, yeah, he then says about Frankie needing a favour from Frankie and also something from the doctor. And you're like, okay, Right. What
Okay.
I had a bit of a vague idea where they were going with this. Yeah, and we'll get to that in a bit.
So meanwhile, Cass is trying to get to know his torturer.
Yeah.
He's trying to get to know this guy, so he's thinking, well, you know, I can use, you know, and he went all vampire on him, didn't he? And it started eating him.
No, you've jumped quite a bit there. So the bit we had with the torturer guy with Frankie was he was sat peeling an apple, and Cassidy was talking to him about the days of the prohibition, and because the guy was going, oh, it's not the same anymore. You can't get the work. You know, the territories are all different. It's not like it was in the 70s or the 80s or even the 90s. And then Cassidy's like, I miss the 20s. You know, he said hanging out with Babe Ruth and some famous gangster guy. And he's like, wait, you knew him? And he's like, yeah. And he said about this one time he saw the guy stick his gun up a guy's ass and blow his brains out. And he said, wow, man, that guy was such a worker. And he said, I know. And he said, and that's exactly how I'm going to kill you. And then he went, And then all the students came in and it was like, who wants to have a go at doing the circumcision? And like, let them do that. And they carried on torturing him. And then when they took him back to his cell, there was this weird bit where he was sat on the floor and he gnawed off his own foot.
That's right. He was eating himself first, wasn't he?
Yeah, and the angel was like, what are you doing? And then he realized, oh, clever, so he could get out of his shackles. So then when the two like torturer guys come to get him, they're like, he's gone. How's he gone? And then he was behind the door. And that's when he pinned them down and ripped their throats out and, you know, killed them and went full on vampire. And then he was able to escape from his cell and go wandering off around the complex.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So, all that was in between that was Tulip found a rocket launcher and she tried to fire it at the door in the Masada because she's still trying to get to Cassidy.
Yeah.
But somebody was watching her, wasn't there? So back at the bar, Star Soldiers are there again.
Yeah.
And the barman that's there wouldn't admit, because they were saying asking about whether anyone had been there and all this, and he was saying no, he wouldn't admit Tulip was there.
Yep.
And it turns out he was hiding her in his shed.
Yeah, and she was working on the car in the shed.
Yeah, working on the car. So, and we thought, oh, well, he's going to help her. And he decided to help her make the rocket launcher, didn't he?
Yeah.
So I'll help you make a rocket launcher. That'll work.
And also the plan, because you got the bit, I mean, this is also connected, that they went and scoped out the place and they were talking about a plan, but we didn't know what the plan was. And he was like, I feel uncomfortable about this. He kept calling her Nissa as well, didn't he? So I don't know whether that's a Middle Eastern word. Excuse my ignorance, anybody that's listening, but whether it's a Middle Eastern word for lady or like a sign of respect or something. But he kept calling her Nissa. He was like, oh, Nissa, I'm not sure about this Nissa. And he was like, I worry about you, Nissa. Is your husband is a bad husband? And she's like, he's not my husband. And she's like, I don't need Jesse for this. I've got this. And he's like, okay.
So we then go back to the desert and we saw Jesse on the back of the guy's camel, the one he'd seen.
Mm-hmm.
And as they were going along, they met another camel rider, didn't they?
And they started arguing with each other.
They were arguing at each other, and he used his voice.
Yeah, because he goes,
use the voice.
What's the problem here? And he goes, it's I don't know what the guy's name, like Ahmed or something. He's Muslim. I hate this guy. And he's like, wait, aren't you Muslim as well? And he's like, no, I'm Coptic. And he's like, oh, okay. And then he said, I hate this guy. He's such an asshole. And then they got off the camels and they're having an argument. And then one pulled out a gun, one pulled out a sword. And then Jesse's like, stop fighting. And the Coptic guy stopped fighting and the other guy didn't. And my first thought was, oh, maybe are they doing the whole because he's a Muslim, that's why he didn't listen to him? But then it wasn't that. It was because he doesn't speak English.
He didn't speak English.
But yeah, that was that whole little setup.
What happened? Why didn't he stop? He goes, because he doesn't speak English or understand English.
Because how was it went down? The guy with the sword stabbed the guy that Jesse was with. His gun went off, it ricocheted off the sword and killed the other guy, went through one camel's head and then through the head of the other camel.
Yeah. So basically he was left again with nothing because both the camels and the guys were dead.
So he kept seeing a plane.
Yes.
Several times.
It was like, I thought, thinking, oh, he's trying to get to an airport. And I was thinking, oh, he's thinking, I'm not far to go. Because we saw it the first time with the boy.
Yeah.
And he's thinking, when he got the camel, and then he's like, I think it was like he's trying to work out where he had to go get to, basically, I thought,
Yeah.
at the time. So then we had back to Star, who's now been promoted by God as the All-Father.
Yeah.
Because the other All-Father ate himself to death, basically, didn't he?
Well, that was all, that all went down in the last series with Jesse
Yeah.
sort of... Oh, the other important thing then, to add into all of this, so in the last season, when we got revealed that there was this guy called the Allfather, who was a disgusting big fat man that ate and then made himself sick, they had a facility, and they were making more clones of the Jesus child, Humperdoo, and they were all increasingly more, brain damaged and stupid. Jesse ended up shutting down that whole facility, but one of the things that happened was, a lot of the Humperdoos got released out into the world. So then we get this whole bit with her star, and her star sat, and it was like, this is also tying into the episode being called The Last Supper, because you had him with a big table full of people, and it was like, although the setup is not like a long table with Jesus in the middle, but I think they were going for that idea of it like being Jesus' Last Supper thing. And he had all these delegates from all over the world, didn't he? That were all like prime ministers or presidents or vice presidents or whatever. And they were asking about the Messiah.
They wanted to see the Holy Child. We saw a quick snippet where there was a guy that looked like Humperdinck, or his name is Humperdoo.
Yep.
And they realised it wasn't him. He said, no, this isn't him, and they shot him, didn't they?
Yeah, because they had that... They were chasing him, and he got up against a chain link fence, and they threw him a cane and a hat, because that's one of the things. Dance. They teach him to do this weird dance.
Is he all singing and dancing Jesus, isn't he?
Yeah, and because he didn't do it, they were like, "No, it's not him," and they bang, shot him through the head. So it's like they're hunting down all these
hunting that still haven't found him. But so that's that was our first thing of knowing they hadn't found him, basically. So then the council was saying they want to see the Holy Child, and the New Zealand diplomat. Was getting really annoyed, saying, and he goes, well, you can't talk to me like that, you're going to be punished now. Yeah. And he stuck him in a box.
With a hand grenade.
With a hand grenade, and it, boom. And then he goes, just blame it on the Australians.
Yeah. Yeah, because they sealed the box.
Sorry, Skippy!
They put an airmail sticker on it, sealed the box up, and then they were obviously going to ship it back to New Zealand and say the Australians did it, to start a war between Australia and New Zealand.
So then we went back to Jesse. So obviously he was trying to get to an airport because he ended up walking. His socks are black by this stage.
Yeah.
So we just saw him walking towards the airport. Cass, meanwhile, had got out of his, as we know, he got out and got into this store. He followed this young guy, went into some storeroom. What was in that storeroom?
What was it called? Was it called Tools of Earthly Ruin or something like that? It was something along those lines. And the room, basically, it was a drugs room. It was full from top to bottom with every kind of drug you can possibly think of. And there was a little Asian man in there, and Cassidy's like, "Oh, hello, y'all do just fine." And the guy's like, "Oh my god!" And then when we cut back to that, obviously Cassidy's dressed in this guy's clothes, and he has the guy tied up in his pants in the corner, and he's like, and then it dawned on him what kind of room he was in, wasn't it? Because he was looking around going, "What have you got in here anyway?" And then he went, "Sweet Holy Mother of God," and he looked up and he was like, "Oh, sweet Jesus," and he was like looking, and there's light coming in from the ceiling, and he's looking at all these drugs with his eyes all twinkly. And then he's kind of like, no, I can't get distracted by that. I've got things I need to do.
So he thought, right, I've got a new identity now, so off I go.
And he's like, what's your name, lads? And he took his pass, and he was like something Chan or something. And he was like, maybe I can pull it off. And he put his glasses on, took his ear pods and put them in to listen to his music.
He got in the lift, didn't he?
Yeah, and he's like going, "Hello, how's it going? How are you doing? Lovely day today." Yeah. Oh, yes, great.
The baddie and all the torturers were in there with him.
No. Well, no, the first time it wasn't. The first time it was a bunch of random people, and he's like going, sure, it's a lovely day today, and all this lot. And he's like acting all like chatty, and they're all like going, yeah, okay. And he gets out and goes to the front door, and he's like, "Well, I'll be on my way then, if you can just let me out now." And the guy's like, "Okay," and he opens the door, and the door opens. Cassidy walks up and then goes, "Sunlight." I forgot my thing down. I've got to go back down there for a minute. I've got the thing that I have to go and do. I'll be back in a moment. I'll see you in a moment. And he gets back in the lift, and he's like going, like really stressed. And what did he do? He went back to the drugs room. Because then, when we see him again, he's covered in cocaine.
Yeah.
And that's when he then screwed everything for himself, because the torturer guy, Frankie, and the other guys were in the lift with him. And then it was like, oh no. And then you thought
They
that he'd
recognised
managed.
him.
Yeah, you thought he managed to get away because he got out of the lift. And there was a big cloud of smoke, obviously dust, which was obviously all the cocaine that he had strapped to his body. And then you saw he was full of bullet holes, and he sort of went, "Eee," and like collapsed straight on the floor. And then he's back in his cell again.
Oh, bless him.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
We found out that the rock that he'd drawn on this bit of paper was called the Lost Apostle.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
And it was in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
So he was all set to go off to Australia.
Because he showed it to a pilot, didn't he?
Well, yeah, he realised he'd left his lighter. That's right, something to do with the pilot. Was he talking to the pilot?
He was stood in the airport trying to figure out where he had to go, and then this pilot came up and said, "There's no smoking in the airport." And Jesse was like, "There is now." And he went, "There's smoking in this airport. I've been so happy." And he pulled out a pack of cigarettes, and Jesse went to light his and realised he didn't have his lighter. So then the pilot gave him a light, and then Jesse was like, "Hey, do you know what this is?" And then he went, "Yeah, that's the Lost Apostle. It's in Australia," and all this lot. He said, "Oh, that's, the flight's going out there." And then it said about the flight was going to Melbourne, but then he was like, "I need my lighter." So he got the pilot, because he then had to he remembered where he left it, which was in that truck. And he remembered the name off the side, Jesus Dessard, House of Entertainment. So he got the pilot to drive him to this place, and it was like it was almost like a stately home, wasn't it? Like a big manor. And there was like big fancy sports cars outside and things like that. Very posh looking place. And they pulled up there, but then they saw something a little bit sinister, because the pilot was like, "Do you see that? Look up there at the window." And there was a very creepy looking man with long hair, and looked like he was half...
And it was like a little boy.
Yeah, and the man was like in a dressing gown, but just obviously in his underwear.
Yeah, it was very strange looking, yeah.
You could see he clearly just had pants on under the dressing gown, and there was a kid. And it's like, oh, this doesn't look very nice. And then the pilot was like, "We have to go in there. You're a preacher. Surely there's a preacher code." And he's like, "I'm just here to get my lighter, and that's it." And he got his lighter. And he's like, "I've got things to do." And he's like, "But you have to do something." And he's like, "There is a pilot code, sir, and I will abide by it." And he got out of the car. And then that was the end of that. We didn't see any more of that section for a little while. But then when we did get, we'll talk about that a little bit, because then when we did get to see that place again, the door was ajar, but we never got to see anything that happened there.
No.
So I'm wondering whether we'll get another like flashbacky thing in the next episode, where it'll be we'll get to see what went down there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so basically, after that happened, he got to the airport, didn't he? And he got on a plane.
Mm-hmm. And then he saw Cassidy.
And, yeah, he was on the plane, and he got that part. It was just him on the plane.
Yeah.
The pilot was driving the plane.
And the pilot's like,
"I've turned off... of Cassidy.
What do you say? "I've turned off the no smoking sign. I've been waiting years to be able to say that."
Yeah, so he basically was going to take him. Mm-hmm. So now we realised the bit about the body flying out of the aeroplane, which will probably happen next week.
Mm-hmm.
So also then we had her star and his new ear.
Oh my God! Yeah, this was his plan.
Did he get it made out of the foreskin?
Yeah, he got Cassidy's foreskins, because they'd been collecting them all up in a bucket. And he got the doctor to fashion him an ear out of Cassidy's foreskins. Oh my God.
Oh my days.
But what I don't understand is, and like Zoe said this as well, she's like, why didn't they shape it? Because it just looks like he's got like a droopy knob on the side of his head.
Well, it goes with what's on top of his head, doesn't it?
Oh my God.
It just wouldn't make sense if it looked good, would it, really,
No.
Considering what's on top of his head.
And then he was like, we'll have to keep an eye on
hilarious.
it. We'll have to keep an eye on it, because, in case it like starts to smell, or it starts like rotting, so I'll keep some of these on ice just in case we need to shore it up a little bit. And it's like, oh, it's horrible.
So also then back at the bar, the barman went and informed on Tulip. And I went, oh, what?
Yeah.
But it's clever, wasn't it? Because obviously that woman had turned up with loads of white cars.
Yeah.
They'd all turned up there to get her. And that was so clever. I knew what was going to happen.
Me too. I did as well.
So there was the car busts out of the shed that she was fixing the car in.
Yeah.
So they started eating it, didn't they? And it just kept twirling around and making all the sand, and they couldn't see anything. In the meantime, all these other cars were, what's going on? I can't see what's happening. And they were all getting taken out, weren't they, the other cars?
Yeah, because you were hearing all this crashing and banging.
Couldn't see anything at all, could she? And the next thing, the big car drove away.
Well, they played chicken to start with. So they had, she took out all the other cars by smashing into them all in this dust storm because they couldn't see what was happening, killed all the other soldiers, and then it was just the main woman in her car and Tulip's car facing off, and then they played chicken. She dodged out of the way at the last moment, and Tulip's car went up this, like, ramp to drive away,
that was great.
And then their car couldn't get up the ramp.
They got so far, didn't they? Just sort
and
of
then rolled back down again.
So then,
it was great.
I think that's when we seen him, didn't we? Because he stopped at the top.
Yeah.
And got out, and it was the barman that got out of the car.
Yeah.
And I went, ah. And then when the help came, they went, there's a woman here, she's still alive.
Yeah.
And they put her on the stretcher, and it was obviously
it was Tulip in her Grail like outfit.
A uniform. So that she's got her way into the place now.
And we had that nice little camera moment where it like zoomed in on her face, and then she sort of opened one of her eyes and grinned as they were taking her into the building.
And the final thing happened at the end of that, after we saw Jessie on the plane, was God in a camper van.
We got a pan across the table with like there was an aeroplane, there was a church, there was a big house, there was all these things, and you go, wait, these are all things from Jessie's life. These are all places or things that we have seen from the show throughout the course of the last couple of seasons. And then as it pulled out, it was God, and he was like moving all these pieces around. And then you're like, wait, so he's been controlling like all these events or having an influence on all these events to do with Jessie's life all the way through. And the fact that he's got a model of a plane, that made me think that's why Jessie ends up falling out of the plane, because God's probably going to like break one of the wings off of the model, and it'll cause the real plane to yeah. So it was like, so he's been manipulating everything all this time.
So every time it gets close to things, something goes wrong, doesn't it? So obviously now we know why. It's like, oh.
So the way we've got it left is obviously Jessie's on a plane to Australia, Cassidy's back in captivity, Tulip's managed to get herself into the building, and God is playing, what's that phrase about God playing marbles with the universe or whatever it is? So he's like doing that, he's like playing with these toys, which are actually all things to do with Jessie's life. So I can't wait until next week.
I can't wait to open the season, though. It was jam-packed with stuff, wasn't it?
It was amazing. Loved it so much. It was so much
just
fun.
So funny. So funny.
And again, it's one of those things, if you've never watched it, obviously we've given you...
Gotta go back and watch them.
Yeah, we've given you a bit of a synopsis, a bit of a sort of idea of what the show's about, but there's so much more over the course of the last 3 seasons, because this is season 4, so the last 3 seasons there was so much stuff happened, so many weird and wonderful characters and scenarios.
Good stories, but really, really belly laughing funny.
And what I love, one of the other things that's funny about this in terms of the cast, is you've got Dominic Cooper, who is an English actor playing an American preacher. You've got Joseph Gilgan, who's an English actor playing an Irish vampire, and then you've got Ruth Negga playing Tulip, who's an American, who's actually an Irish Ethiopian. So the 3 main characters in the show aren't even American actors. And if anybody needed to know any more about this, if you know who Seth Rogen is, this is his show. Basically, Seth Rogen is behind this show. That's another thing to sell you on the program.
There's definitely another one, like we said. If you've never seen it, you got to watch it.
Yeah.
You've got to see how it got to where it got to. It's so good. It's just brilliant.
Yeah. And it's just, it's bonkers, and it's gory, and it's rude, and it's clever, and it's funny, and, you know, it's just so many different things all mashed into one. It's fantastic. Highly recommend it.
Indeed, I would as well.
Well, there we go, guys. So that is our bumper return episode of Talking TV with my mum. I hope that you've enjoyed this and you've stuck with us throughout and you didn't just jump around using the timestamps. I know there's some of you that will have made it all the way through and probably appreciated this slightly longer episode, because I've had comments before where people are like, oh, and then it was over and I wanted more. Well, this time you got more. Next
a 2 week worth in one.
Yeah, next week we'll probably be back to normal a bit more, because we will only have one Legion, one Preacher, return of Fear the Walking Dead, and one episode of Stranger Things. So it won't be quite as jam-packed full of stuff. But we've got more things on the horizon as well. And obviously Preacher's going to keep us company for a little while. And we've got half a season of Fear the Walking Dead still to go as well.
Yeah. And the return of American Horror Story next month.
Yes, return of American Horror Story. So we'll be talking about that too. So there we go, folks.
Good.
Thank you very much for joining us. So if you can hit that thumbs up button and leave us a like to let us know you enjoyed this. Leave your comments down below. As we've said before, we'll read them out. We'll engage with them if you give us questions or your own take on these programs and things like that. Have we clued you into something you weren't aware of? Are you as passionate about these particular shows as we are? You know, what do you think about a Nazi leader of a church-led organisation with a penis for an ear? You know, it's like, let us know your thoughts in the comments. Also,
penis head.
Also, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Your patronage to the Geek-Dom, to the Kingdom of Geeks, is hugely appreciated. The bigger we can swell our numbers, the more YouTube and the algorithm and stuff will take notice and get our show out to a bigger audience. Check out my description box for the link to my Twitter, so you can come and follow chat to me on there. And also check out my donation mediums if you feel kind enough to drop me something to help support this podcast, the channel, and any future projects. At the same time, you know, under no obligation to do so. So there we go, Mum. We're all done. Thank you very much for doing this again with me this week.
This is all right. I enjoyed it. I've enjoyed the programmes, so it's good to talk about them.
Yes.
After watching them separately, because we don't live anywhere near each other, so it's nice to have a discussion about them. So
absolutely.
Always good.
So there, we will go now, and we will see you guys next time. So you take care now. Bye-bye.
Bye, 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 bye.